How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another episode of No Excuses on VTWProductions.com and YouTube.com with your favorite show hosts, Still.
Venerian.
And Volacel, and we're here to bring you the latest news and commentary on the video games industry for the week that was. But first of all, if you would like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com, or you can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in the Discord server for the show, which you can most easily get to simply by clicking the link below this video on YouTube in the video description, or alternatively, you can go to vtwproductions.com and click on the show logo on any of our recent show posts, which will take you directly to our Discord server.
Yes, indeed. That was a very, very full-on ramble. Alright, so today on the stream, I failed miserably during the week and didn't actually record anything ahead of time, so we're playing a bit of City of Heroes because nostalgia.
We'll switch it up later, for a little bit at least.
Spoilers.
So, foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing. So yeah, it's been a while since I actually looked at the City of Heroes servers, the private servers as they are. They've made a lot of improvements. The game's a lot more stable these days. Abilities actually fire when you use them, for example.
You're not a minute later?
Not a minute later. The lag and the rubber banding was pretty horrendous when they first put it up. And NCSoft seems perfectly content to look in the other direction.
I guess that they must just not care about the IP anymore.
Yeah, I think
because there is a legal reason. If they care about the IP, there is a legal reason for them to shut this down. But maybe they just don't care if their control over that IP lapses. Maybe there's just no interest in doing anything.
Yeah,
I guess. If you tried to make the case for it, you would probably find that it was right for them not to care, because the world only cares about Marvel right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, a superhero IP is not worth very much if it's not Marvel right now.
These days, nope.
So
Even
you've got this combination at work currently where there is just, you've got the Marvel thing, so people care about it if it's Marvel, but also simultaneously with Marvel, you've got Marvel-induced superhero fatigue.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are those that are looking for alternative superhero stuff that is not terrible, but that's not a huge market to begin with.
Yeah, DC is the one that has the potential to compete on that market, and they've done some really good stuff with Batman. Shame they've done absolute garbage with everyone else.
Well, DC right now had a strong run going with its comic books until they got woke.
Yeah, wokeness seems to have crept in everywhere.
They deliberately unwoke themselves for about a year and a half, and then tried to rewoke themselves and crashed again.
That should actually tell them everything they need to know.
They must have got some ideologue up near the top that was just like, "No, we're doing the woke thing."
Yeah.
Well, I think you've got it a bit wrong, because I don't think that they don't think of it as being woke. They think of it as not being Nazis.
Yeah.
That's the thing. They aren't trying to position themselves, like, they're trying to appear woke in the virtue signaling sense, but they aren't saying let's do woke. They're saying if we don't do woke, everybody will say we're Nazis and we can't afford that.
Yeah.
They all live in perpetual fear.
Oh no, somebody called you a Nazi on the internet.
People
being mean to you on the internet is a form of violence, didn't you know?
People disagreeing with you on the internet is a form of violence.
Yeah, that's harassment. Let me tell you. People, the police.
People abstractly, without interacting with you at all, having an opinion that differs from yours is violence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Welcome to the internet.
Microaggressions. Remember those? Haven't heard those in a while.
Thank goodness.
No. Buttigieg's campaign internally is imploding.
Oh right. Butt gig.
They keep circulating questionnaires about trying to determine if there's any microaggressions taking place, because that would be awful.
Right.
Like, the definition of microaggression is not actually aggression.
It's saying something that could, in any random light, be considered as slightly, even tangentially offensive.
It's just, I don't like this person's opinion, is what it means.
Something that would otherwise be innocuous, somebody has chosen to make it into something insulting for themselves.
Yes. So at that point, you're just choosing to be offended, and you're just trying to pick an argument.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of money in that now.
That there is.
And it also makes these people feel good.
Anyway.
When they can call you mean names.
So yeah, as far as superhero games go, like there's a couple of decent single-player ones-ish. The Spider-Man one was pretty good, if you ignore the fact that it was basically Batman.
I mean, I'll take a Batman Arkham City template and stick a Spider-Man skin on it.
It worked. It worked very well.
Mean,
provided that it's a good Spider-Man who's properly the right sort of dorky.
This was a very dorky Spider-Man. You wanted to feed him his own quips.
You just you wanted to not play Mary Jane in that game in all her segments.
Or Miles, because this was pre-Powers Miles, so boring.
Yeah. So you got, at least he can hack stuff to interact with the environment while he's doing his sneaky bits. But Mary Jane just has to sneak.
She can throw,
and not be seen.
Throw a rock.
It doesn't sound fun at all.
It's not.
No, you go... You go from Spider-Manning to sneaking around as Mary Jane or Miles. Yeah. But Miles can at least use his Omni hacking tool that he developed because he's a super genius or something.
Yeah.
To interact with the environment.
Was that the game that had that sort of running joke between Spider-Man and his contact, and she got really ticked off about it because he kept putting on this...
Yes.
I can't remember any of the details. I just sort of remember that there was some vague running joke.
There was a running joke going in there, and he kept giving her a nickname or something. I forget.
No, I think he was calling himself something.
Yeah, he was.
Insisting that he be referred to as such.
I do not remember.
Yeah, it was something like that.
But someone sent me a supercut of all of those conversations.
Yeah. But overall, very good game, and you should totally go play it.
Oh, it's a okay game. It's just Arkham City.
Very good by AAA standards.
Wasn't there like some big Marvel game that was supposed to come out and it hasn't yet? Like an Iron Man one or an Avengers one or something?
Yeah, the one where the Avengers look almost, but not quite like their movie counterparts.
Right, because they didn't actually have the license for the cinematic universe.
Yeah, and then they slapped Ms. Marvel in it because apparently she can stand in the same field as these veterans. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, they really want her to.
They do.
That's the thing.
I don't mind her as a character so much, but I just don't like the way they kind of try and shoehorn her in that places she's really not really ready for.
That's what happens when you deliberately get a director who is pro-women feminism to the max, and then get them to hire Brie Larson, who is just a horrible human being, but also super pro-women feminism.
And not much of an actor.
The focus of your movie. Yeah, not very good either.
I'm not going to try and claim like I've seen Captain Marvel or anything like that, but all of the... Normally you pick the best stuff for your trailers and your short clips and teasers and whatnot, right? But all of the ones that I've seen, she just has sort of like a blank look or a sort of a grimace, and those are the only expressions she ever has.
Gab, cliche was basically all I got from the trailer. Her appearance and performance in Endgame was kind of downplayed, and I'm thankful for that, because whenever she's on the screen, you just want her to go away.
Yeah, I mean, that ended up in a that development process ended up in a pretty rough place from what I heard. Like, I think that there probably exists on the cutting room floor a version of that movie where she is responsible for saving the day and solving all the problems single-handedly.
I had heard there was that, and I think a lot of people would really be salty if, you know, the absolute last-minute insert character was the one to solve everything.
Somebody must have gotten a boardroom meeting and been like, dudes, this is our last chance to make money off this because it's not going to do as well with whatever we're calling the next phase of all this junk. We've got to end this one to bring in the dollars. We can't do the virtue signals here, my dudes. We need the money owes.
In their case, they had a good platform to build on because the previous movie wasn't a flop. Mm-hmm. Star Wars had the same meeting, I think, in that they were trying to solve the problem that they caused for themselves with The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't do it because the foundation that they were building on was too garbage.
Yeah.
The only way they could go is further garbage.
It didn't work so well.
Mm.
Yep. They were just paying the price of what they had done before.
But
can we just get a Worm movie or game instead of more Marvel stuff, please?
Yeah, but
anyway. You want them to ruin that, do you?
Yeah, no,
oh yeah.
But Brie
that'd
Larson
be
aside,
so easy to trip over virtue signaling with.
Yeah, Brie Larson aside, even just the character of Captain Marvel's kind of Like, she's stupid powerful in a universe that doesn't have a whole lot of stupid powerful people. That kind of makes
Marvel's
it boring.
got some of the most busted dudes around. What you talking about, Willis?
It does, but you tend not to focus on them too much.
Well, she seems to. I don't know a lot about the Captain Marvel character, but it seems like they've placed her on a Superman tier of power, not an Iron Man tier of power.
Yeah, she's not quite Superman, but she's close.
She's a god who just happens to be clad in flesh, like Superman. She's not a human that has actually been raised up to have an additional power or two.
Yeah.
Like that's ultimately where she seems to sit in the power hierarchy. And those characters aren't interesting, generally speaking. The Superman gets away with it because Superman shackles himself with morality.
Yeah, his whole world of cardboard thing.
But the Brie Larson incarnation of Captain Marvel is shackled only to feminism. That's it.
Yeah. The entire reason for making that character part of the MCU instead of picking any of the other major players they could have, that universe is stuffed with them, is because they wanted a feminist icon. And the only reason they brought in the director they did is because they wanted a feminist movie. They didn't want a good movie, they wanted a feminist movie.
Yeah.
What they got was an icon of how to make an unrelatable, unlikable protagonist.
Yeah. Yeah, she's just... no. I would have rather them actually make a Black Widow movie. Like, her background is really cool and kind of dark. Actually, it's extremely
but
dark.
I don't think you can make a properly dark background for a female character these days. It's too dangerous. Because you'll get accused of something.
Well, there was that one line where she references her background. I'm not going to say which one it is because people who know. And that got the going all on its own.
Yeah, it'll just be like, the launch of Rising of the Shield Hero anime all over again, basically.
Yeah. But anyway, where were we going with this? So, yeah.
You're weak.
The options for superhero games at the moment are pretty limited. You've got Spider-Man and you've got the Rebirth of City of Heroes, and that's about it. Unless you want to go down the rabbit, but it's not being readily supported. Like, they put out a new event, which is basically a reskin of an old event last year, and say, oh, we're still making content. Yeah. No.
Well, I mean, I think I've made my opinion on that particular game abundantly clear. I was deeply offended by it. It felt to me like they weren't being honest with their intentions.
No. Perfect World kind of ruined it. Everything, the stuff before that was better. Then Perfect World kind of swooped in and just loaded up with loot boxes and crap. And stopped supporting it. Anyway, so as for that, yes, not Champions Online, City of Heroes, still a good game. Visually it hasn't aged very well, but if you go onto the private server, there is a high resolution texture pack they've put out. And that makes things look so much better. Particularly the costume pieces actually look like they belong in the same universe.
You're still wearing a clown suit.
I'm kind of running around like green Skeletor at the moment. I was going to be purple and green, but that was too Skeletor.
The only screenshots I ever see of people that make characters are a whole lot of Shreks, a whole lot of Hulks, and a whole lot of Taylors from Worm.
Yeah. There is a lot of Taylors running around.
So how populous is it at the moment?
So they've got 6 servers going. When I logged in for today's session, one server was at capacity, and 4 of the 5, if not 5, were at high capacity. So there's a lot of people playing it. I'm not exactly sure what the capacity of each server is, but yeah, if they're filling up their servers, they're doing something right.
Yeah, I still have the client installed, but to be honest, I don't remember where I installed it, so I can't find it.
Yeah, that's okay. If you when you download the actual third-party launcher, it'll probably download the client again anyway.
What's the third-party launcher called?
Tequila.
Right, I'll search for that and see if it's on my computer.
All right. As for my week, as though we've blithered about superheroes for long enough, did a little bit. I powered through low rank and high rank Monster Hunter on the PC version in about 3 days, all told. Don't do that. Do not do that.
You know, I thought I marathon games when I had a lot of free time. It takes like 30 minutes per hunt.
It didn't actually, because when you log in for the first time, make a new character, it loads you up with your Guardian armor, and you can make a Guardian weapon to go with it, or a Defender weapon.
Oh, what tier is that?
That's like just before end game for the launch. The launch version.
When you first make it, it's kind of about the end of low tier.
Well, it costs like 1 ore to make, and then it costs like 1 of the next one that you encounter to upgrade. So
yeah,
you're always at sort of end for the tier that you're on if you keep upgrading it.
The only exception being is when you upgrade the armor. It does require still all those armor spheres, and it upgrades a lot. So if you rush through it, you're going to get enough money and materials to bring all that gear up and just keep it in pace. What you're not going to have when you enter into Master Rank, though, is anything. At all. Because I rushed it, I had no mantles, I had no money, I had no research points, I had no gear. Because the Guardian gear, as soon as you hit Master Rank, becomes pretty much worthless.
You don't have any stream stones?
No stream stones.
But my stream stones.
That's going to be a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
That's how you don't bleed against Odago and like don't die to fire for all the fire bosses.
I had no decorations either, so I couldn't use whatever build I decided to put together at all. So the build I've got right now, I've flicked over. I went through low rank, high rank with a gun lance because I could do that pretty quickly, and now I've flicked back to hunting horn. I roped a couple of friends into helping me farm Anjanath before I was even actually supposed to be able to fight Anjanath. So I got that one, the Don't Die horn.
She has a good set for dual blades.
It also has a very good set for dual blades. So yeah, it's been interesting. If you rush through low rank and you try and go into master rank, you're going to hit a wall. Like, hard.
Just go kill Jaggy over and over again.
Yeah, even Great Jagras could cause you problems if you get hit by him. Because he still hits hard.
Just keep Superman diving.
Just keep Superman diving. So, yeah, the PC version is still well behind the PS4 version, but they are both sharing the spring event, or the anniversary event, rather. You can actually make the handler look like the space cadet she is. Her costume for this new event is some sort of galactic sparkly outfit with dealy bopper antennas on it.
Seems appropriate.
Yeah. It makes her look like a complete fruitcake, which is appropriate.
She was your handler was touched in the head as a child.
Not a single person I've encountered likes the handler. Apparently, she might be popular in Japan because they go for that whole Genki girl thing, I guess, but yeah, she's just annoying at the best of times.
I'm not sure she actually is popular there.
It's probably a stretch, yeah.
Just a little bit special, that one.
Yeah. Her motto of when in doubt, take a bite is just asking for trouble. Alright, so yeah, that's been eventful. Where am I up to at the moment? I've managed to push through, rope some friends into actually helping me out. I haven't gotten too far into Master Rank. I think I'm up to Nightshade Lumu. Who is, as we've established before, just the worst.
Yeah, he's pretty bad.
He's not difficult per se. He's just extremely annoying. And I've got no gems I can socket for sleep resistance or anything like that.
Serves you right for abandoning me, you bastard.
I'll come back to the PS4 version. At some point. There is one thing that the PC version does have, or rather will have, and that's mods. Oh boy, the mods. The mods, things that people have created. Like turning Devil Joe into a literal pickle. I'm not... Do we even want to talk about the Neptune one? Because that is the stuff of nightmares.
It's fabulous.
It is watching a small digital girl strapped onto Nergikante's rig scuttle her way across this arena and make incredibly annoying, cheerful noises at you while murdering you brutally. It's horrifying. So yeah, just be careful when you're diving into the mods, because some of the stuff people have done is messed up beyond all reason.
And there'll be one which is full of Shrek. There's always one that's full of Shrek.
Well, there is one that turns Basil Gaius into Thomas the Tank Engine.
Is there one that turns Beetlejuice into Beetlejuice?
Probably. I'm actually going to look that up. Hang on. Let's see.
Because I want a mod that's just like the 90s Beetlejuice cartoon version of Beetlejuice.
Oh, the actual funny one, not the horrifying one.
Yeah, not the movie.
I don't actually remember anything about the movie. Other than I remember thinking, how exactly does the cartoon have any relation to this?
It's a very light, very silly take on the actual content of the movie.
I first saw the movie after I had seen the cartoon as a kid, and me and my sister were like, "Oh, we like the Beetlejuice cartoon. It's funny. We see it on the television." We were real young, so we saw that the Beetlejuice movie that it originally came from was on some TV channel, and we watched it, and we're like, "That was horrifying. That was nothing like the cartoon."
Oh no!
We were like 9.
Let's see. I'm not seeing one. Although there are plenty of ones that try to make the Candler less annoying.
By putting a piece of duct tape on her mouth?
There is one here that makes Basil Gaius go ree.
But he stays re.
Yeah.
I see.
One that makes Basil Gaius drop bombs.
I think I've seen that.
One that turns him into an actual B-52 bomber.
That's pretty good. We'll take that as a substitute.
Yeah. And one that changes his theme song into some sort of Leroy Jenkins tribute thing.
Well, I mean, I'm really, 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 really sick of hearing his actual music.
Yeah, it's usually following an explosion.
That's actually, I think design-wise, there's something... I'm not going to say that I like it because I hate it, but there's something very... they've hit the sort of right tone and tenor with his music such that it's so distinctive in the way it leads off that you always know exactly what it means when it starts up.
Well, usually I think the first opening note of that song is kaboom, followed by the main fanfare of it. I think that's how it goes. That's how I usually hear it. Because unlike Devil Joe in previous games, when Devil Joe intrudes, you could hear his theme song before you even noticed him. Basil, no. He drops on your head, then you hear the theme song. Curse you, Basil. You ruin everything. What else did I really do this week? Not a whole lot. Just kind of actually hung around with some friends and played way too much Stellaris yesterday. I will not bore people with the tales of horrible robot genocide that we inflicted upon the universe. So I'm going to call my week there. Vol, what have you done, sir?
Nothing. Like last week, I emphasized my fervent wishes that the week to come would be better than the one that I had just had.
It wasn't.
It was not. It was substantially worse, in fact. I had very little free time to myself, and 9 and 10 hour days turned into 11 and 12 hour days, and everything was terrible forever. So, yeah, I really don't have anything to talk about for my week. I didn't have time to play any video games. I would just go to work, come back, and go to sleep, which was very frustrating to me. I tried to jam some in because I wanted to try and make some progress on the Setsubun event, which turns out to be exactly as brutal as I was worried it would be. But there just wasn't the time. I'm still hoping that I'll have enough free time, maybe this afternoon, maybe tomorrow, to at least get as far as completing a max limit break copy of the event craft essence. But I'm not very hopeful about it. I'm going to try though. I've made some progress, but I don't think it's really enough because you need to make a progress of something like 30 floors a day to finish it, and I'm not even close to that. Like I got like 3 floors done yesterday, sort of thing. That was all the time I had. Yeah, it's the event is strange in that it is not grindy in the conventional sense of the word, and yet it is worse than if it was just a grind because you have to constantly devise new teams and everything. Like 200 teams you have to concoct to get through this event. Every time you finish a floor, all of those servants go on cooldown for 4 hours, and so you've got to concoct a new team from the ones you've got left while you wait for them to cool down. And of course you want to save your better ones so that you've got them handy when you come across tougher boss levels and that type of thing and so on. So there's a lot of additional concerns to be mindful of, and it makes things very difficult. Very, very difficult. But yeah, I think it's difficulty wise, it's not actually too hard in the conventional sense. It's just that you can set yourself up for being unable to progress any further simply as a result of having used up the servants that you need to take down a certain boss or whatever. But yeah, so it's an interesting format, but when it was released in Japan, it was released on Golden Week. So
okay,
everybody had time that week to play through it, and I think that for the vast majority of normal people who have a full-time job, it's not really practical unless you devote literally all the free time you have to it to clear the entire thing. I'm sure there are some that would argue with that and say, oh, I can do it. But, you know, if you've got a modest stable of servants like I do, maybe not quite so easy. If you get stuck doing 12-hour shifts like I do, maybe not quite so easy. But if you were trying to do it blind like they would have had to originally when the event first came out, you would have needed those public holidays to do it. But yeah, it's just I think it's one of those events which doesn't translate simply because of the conditions under which it was deployed, and that's really all there is to it. But yeah, I would like to say that I had accomplished anything else, but that wouldn't be true. I haven't done anything, and I'm deeply disappointed in it. But yeah, it just so happens that the end of January, early February is kind of like that's the hottest part of the year in the South Island of New Zealand, that January February border, and as a result, it means that a lot of the vegetable produce companies are hitting their peak season for harvesting.
Okay.
Meaning that they're sending in a humongous quantity of samples. Just part of why I keep having to do these late shifts, and part of it is just the spectacular and consistent mismanagement of the business by my managers. But yeah, all I can do is cross my fingers and hope that the suffering will end soon. But I'm not really that hopeful.
Yeah, I wouldn't count on it the way that business needs to go.
Yeah, maybe I'll get another job offer. It could happen.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah, because I'm getting extremely tired, and so is everybody I work with, and it's resulting in mistakes and conflict and that sort of thing. Because everybody's just too tired to do a decent job when it comes down to it, and the management doesn't seem to realize that tired people don't stop being tired when they go home for the night. It carries over to the next day. So, yeah, it's rough, but I just have to put up with it for the time being because in modern society, the objective of growing up is to become a wage slave. So, yeah. I don't have anything else to talk about because I didn't have the opportunity to do anything else.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not even any animated really to talk about because this season is boring and dull.
Yeah, part of me is disappointed in that, and part of me is glad of a break.
It is nice being able to catch up.
Yeah.
And at least they've given us something light and stupid to have in between with Isekai Quartet.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't think there's absolutely anything at all worth mentioning about the anime season.
It was a slow season when Funimation licensed porn.
They did that last season too, now that you mention it.
No, I mean literal porn.
Yes.
No, we're not talking something fan servicey. We're talking like purpose-built hentai.
Yes. There was one of those last season too.
Was there?
Yeah, it may have been Funimation. Hang on, let me double check.
Because Funimation flipped out when they realized they just licensed porn and lost their minds and stopped making the show.
Funimation has been on a massive downward spiral since mid last year.
You mean since the Vic thing hotted up and everybody doesn't like them anymore?
And nobody trusts them as far as they can throw them anymore. Yeah, that.
Yeah. There's a reason Funimation ain't getting hired no more. The Vic thing worked. Even though he hasn't won his legal case, the community collectively turning around and going, well, what did you do? Has made every single developer go to Bang Zoom and Sentai Filmworks for all the in-house dubbing and stuff they need.
Yeah.
Then nobody's going to Funimation right now. Funimation actors are just not getting hired for as many projects, and you can see that just by looking at the major high-profile releases lately. All the people in dubs all come from Bang Zoom.
Here we go. Oh no, it wasn't Funimation that licensed the porn last season. That's fine.
Yeah, they did it by accident this time, and it apparently took a few episodes for it to become legit full porn.
But they have to have just not read the synopsis.
Yeah.
Because everybody knew that the story is about a bunch of guys who go around reviewing brothels. Like, what conclusion can you come to other than the fact that it's porn?
Way.
Yeah, there's not some other story in there.
The current running theory is it was the gender bent porn episode that got him, and you can't have that because that's a red flag for every type of woke person.
I thought the obvious choice was die. Yeah, I don't know. Funimation is, oh boy, where to even start? I suppose at this point. I'm just digging through the current anime season, and yeah, I'm not seeing even anything remotely worth looking at. I know I've got one friend who he loves all the romancy mushy stuff. I suppose more power to him.
And then it's just like, no, I'm done now.
Back when we've
seen all this before.
In our mid-20s and maybe still had a chance of getting in a relationship.
Now that's bleak.
That's also realistic.
Yeah, but we don't.
Some people don't really fit into the real world as it exists. So
I reject the real world.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know that was necessarily my motivation for watching them back then, because the ones that I preferred to watch tended to be like more idealized anyway, as opposed to the realistic ones that tend to. Well, I say realistic, I don't actually mean realistic, but the ones that try and gather about themselves a semblance of realism that are are more popular these days.
Yeah.
Like I was content watching things that had key magic in them back then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want to watch something that's mushy and makes you feel good. You get that.
Well, no, Clanad never made me feel good.
No. Oh, Clanad, no.
Key magic is to stop you from killing yourself after the depression hits.
Yes.
It is purely a remedy for those that are infected with the school, but from the school of Junko.
So it was more of a detox than anything else.
Well, yeah, everybody dies horribly, and then key magic happens, and you're left with the did it really happen, or did it really just end horribly for this guy ending? That's how key magic works.
I'm going to pretend that was a happy ending.
Yeah, it leaves it up to your interpretation whether or not, you know, the guy that married his longtime high school sweetheart had a child with her, had both the child and the mother die, and is left all alone in this world, really got them to come back to life with magic and hope, or if he's just living a fantasy in his head because he's finally broken and just can't take it anymore.
Yeah. In case people haven't picked it up, Clanad is dark.
It doesn't sell that it's dark to you until very, very late in the piece, though.
And by then it's too late.
The halfway point is when things start to go downhill.
They're extremely patient about getting you to invest yourself in the characters to the point where it will cause the maximum damage when the world falls apart for them.
Yeah.
That's what Key's good at. Also, your dogs are talking to you.
Yeah, I know. They're locked outside the room and they want in. And they won't shut up until they get in, I suppose. And it's depressing.
They're here early. They normally don't start this until literally the moment the show ends.
Yeah. I'm going to have to go deal with this. Keep going while I sort this out.
Well, I can't really keep going since I didn't do anything this week.
We've been tangenting as it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I don't have a week, I don't have much choice but to tangent.
Yeah. So when we get back, I have something of a week to talk about. I've been mostly today, but a few other days playing another game, and I'll wait till Fern gets back before I start talking about that one, because it's actually on the PC, so we can show it to you guys on the YouTubes, which is going to be interesting. Although I did figure out on Steam, if you are streaming a game, and on Discord, if you decide to stream it, it will just stop streaming if the stream has been on a frozen screen because you've been tabbed out with no sound for like 5 minutes. It'll just kill the stream for you.
Well, that's fine. I just absolutely left my City of Heroes character in combat and face planted.
Oh, that's good.
So that was fun. Whew,
yeah.
That dog dropped his guts on the way out. Oh, dear.
Well, does Vol have anything else for his week? If not, I got a couple things I can
I believe me, I sincerely wish I did.
All right. I got a couple things I can run through. I will restart my stream, Fern, so you can show it to the viewers when we get there.
Yep.
I have to actually restart the dumb thing.
That's okay. I got to kick OBS to get it to see it again too.
Yeah, so we know in future now if you leave the game running and you tab out so that the screen freezes and the sound stops, Discord just thinks the game is frozen and will eventually close the stream. So I can't tab out like that. So first thing I noticed, I didn't have a whole lot of motivation to do much of anything after work this week because it was tax week for the quarter. And I had done all my prep work ahead of time, and it was much better than last time for last quarter, but it was still a mess. So basically, I was just doing taxes all week and trying to figure out how the government works. And I'll tell you what, if you don't hate the government, if you don't think the government is incompetent and is not the solution to all your problems, take over accounting for a company. I guarantee by the end of it, you'll be an anarchist.
That's not anarchy. That's how you should be by default.
Well, the government is useless.
Yes.
The government does nothing other than make sure other governments don't come and kill you. That is the point of the government.
And take your money.
They take a lot of it too.
And they're not shy about doing it.
So the government decides it needs to take all your money. And I'm sitting here watching our bank account and the amount we're going to lose to the government get bigger and bigger and bigger, and our bank account gets smaller and smaller as I keep crunching the numbers. And it's just a very disheartening experience.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And
the image quality is not good.
You guys don't have the wonderful thing that is counties in your countries.
No, taxation is taken care of at a federal level here.
Yeah, so is ours. We have, for local government, we have rates.
Yeah.
Which are worse than national taxation in a certain way, because there's absolutely nothing governing how high they can get. They just increase them whenever they feel like it. And since there's nobody in the world who is engaged with local body politics at the town level, they just go up and up and up and up and up.
Mm-hmm. There's really no checks or balances to keep them in line either. It's like, for example, the place I own has an annual water bill of $800, whether it's... sorry, that's a half-year bill of $800. And that's regardless of how much water is actually used.
Yeah. So most of that crap is the county level here. Counties are subdivisions of a state that are smaller than the state, and there's about 16-ish in smaller states, and as many as somewhere in the ballpark of 40 to 45 in the bigger states. So, and the counties vary wildly in size, and are usually somewhere in the ballpark of where political voting districts were drawn at some point in that state's history, until gerrymandering just got out of hand whenever it finally did in each state.
So, which inevitably did.
This happened in every state. And we got every single county can set its own sales tax rate. Now, here's the kicker. When you sell something in your state, it doesn't matter what state you sold it in. It matters where the job was in its specific county. So you need to find out where every single job took place and in what county it did, and use their sales tax rate. And you have to total all the jobs you did in every single county.
Who thought that was a good idea?
And you have to get the tax code number for that district in the county, because counties are further subdivided by zones and districts. And you have to pull out the little laminated sheet buried in the tax folder and look up the code for every single one. Because this is not a piece of paper that just anybody can find, apparently. It's only given to business accountants.
Oh, yay.
So you can't just go Google this. I'm sure you could, but you're not supposed to be able to. I don't know if they've given up on that rule or not since the internet's become a thing, but the government moves notoriously slow on this crap.
Yes.
So...
I don't know. Every time I look at a lot of the ways the American government works, it just makes no sense.
Yeah, it's because we were never supposed to be a proper super country. We were supposed to be 50 tiny countries that have one unified military.
Yeah.
But
and the result is a mess.
But yeah, Hamilton happened, basically.
Yeah.
This all can be traced back to him.
There's other things too, like not including tax on the price tags in supermarkets. Why would you not do that?
That's a thing that's happened. And some counties have got so fed up with it, and some states have got so fed up with it, because the state can supersede any county law and override it with a state law if it desires. And some states have just got fed up with it and just cut sales tax entirely and made it all property and income tax.
Okay.
Which is lovely for every person who has to do bookkeeping, because it means they have to do all the paperwork and you don't have to file anything except your normal W-2s and tax returns at the end of the year.
Yay.
I do not live in such a wonderful world.
No. I imagine you don't.
I live in a fairly normal county that hasn't realized what sanity is yet. And our tax rate in our county is actually low to medium. It's 6% sales tax, which is not that bad.
That's better than what we get.
Yeah. So, but it doesn't matter because we don't sell anything in Gwinnett County. We sell stuff in like Fulton County, where the tax is like 12%. So it was a mess, and you have to calculate the subtotals before you add sales tax or freight charges to anything if you ship out, because freight charges are a thing. and you have to take your subtotal and the tax amount that you charge the customers and report all that to the government and then do retarded math with it.
Good grief.
Man, our sales tax is 15%.
Ours is, I believe it's still at 10% last I looked.
Yeah, ours is, I'm in a fairly medium to low sales tax bracket county, which is part of the reason I'm going to keep living in this ballpark area, because it's got a reasonable sales tax rate. But yeah, so it was just a pain in the butt. And we had a big job to do with the local public transportation system, the MARTA subway system. I hate MARTA. I hate the government. And I hate having to work for MARTA and the government.
Well, you just put yourself on some sort of watch list.
But if they're the government, then you can charge whatever you want.
Well, that's great when you're making the sale. But every single person who's working on this job has the same attitude of, oh, it's the government, I don't have to try.
Yeah.
And nobody can remember what the heck's going on or what revision somebody asked for or what the last engineer who did something for it said. It's been a mess to track down everything. And it has just turned into this giant total disaster of a project that every 5 minutes there's either an email in my email box or somebody pokes their head in my office and goes, oh, by the way, the MARTA job. And I just want to start beating my head on my desk every time that happens.
And you've only seen it from one avenue.
Yeah.
I've seen it from all avenues.
Yeah, so this is why government projects are a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because nobody is held accountable for anything if the government decides to hire private contractors.
The other thing, of course, is during my building certification days, is as part of the certification process, they had to move a estimated project cost. And generally, you look at the estimated project cost, and you look at what they're actually making, and you just think, yeah, no. Because generally, whatever they will be charging the government is at least twice what they'll be charging someone in the public.
Yeah, and part of the reason these government projects get so expensive is because people like me exist that say, oh, the government's paying for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to get some of my money back.
In some cases, it's the government is an enormous pain in the ass, so I want to be qualified for my time.
Because the government doesn't give a crap about its own budget.
No.
So you can mark that stuff up 100, 200%, and as long as you win the bid, job's yours. Government don't care what they got to pay.
Some things are universal.
Yeah. So that whole project has been a train wreck all week, where I will sometimes get home, be sitting at my desk, and bleep bloop.
Bleep bloop.
Oh, great! It's the MARTA job. So I've been unfortunately having to deal with the government all week in various ways, and
you're not helping them expand, are you?
Oh, I'm paying for a expansion in the other direction.
Oh, okay. As long as they go over there.
They can go west. I am north of the city. I can go as far west as they want. They'll eventually hit Alabama that way. But no, they need a whole intricate system for one of the new stations they're building out as they expand west.
Yeah.
Because the water's got to move somehow.
So yeah, I know we're probably on some sort of watch list now, but it's no big secret. People overcharge the government on these projects, and the government is a pain in the bum on these projects. Yeah,
everything about a government job exists for the benefit of the people that manage to wrangle their way into the government job.
Yeah.
Because their sole objective is, this government's taking how much of my money? Let's see how much we can get back.
Up until the point where they make a mess of it.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is people will often come in for very small parts of the job because it's so lucrative when a government project like this pops up.
Mm-hmm.
And then once their part's done, they're gonzo. And will cut contact with anybody else involved in the project. Because they don't need to be held accountable as a customer to the government.
It's fairly common, actually, for building firms around here to just fold. They'll, when they're doing a government job, they will build a new company under the umbrella. And then after they've done their part, they fold. So they've got absolutely no liability.
Yeah. So it is hunting down old engineers, or people, in this case, people that knew the old engineer, is not an adventure I would recommend anybody try to go on. because they will change engineers for different parts of the job. And as soon as one of them's done doing the design document, done playing in AutoCAD, playing with whatever drawing he's doing, he's gone. And he has nothing to do with that project anymore. And there's some new engineer in his place working on some new part of the job that you got to find. And you got to hope he knows somebody that knew the guy that talked to the previous engineer that might have his old drawing still around somewhere that he can send you. Since you can't actually get in contact with the old engineer, because as soon as he hears it's from Marty, he's hanging up on you.
Yep.
This happened 3 times throughout this project, by the way. This is just, it happened again this week. This exact scenario.
Good grief.
So it is a mess. But in a way, I'm kind of glad I'm going through this mess, because there's a whole lot of experience and eye-opening things you can learn about your government while you're working a government job this big. And just how incompetent they are. If you vote for anything for the government to have more power to take care of you or something, after a job like this, you're an idiot. Because the government is the most incompetent entity on the planet. No matter what your government is. Oh. So, my political position aside.
That's not really political, that's just observation.
Well, that is a political position these days because everybody else is running on Big Daddy government.
To be fair, everything is political now.
Yeah, but Big Daddy government is the hot one. That's what everything boils down to in the end for one political side. So, yeah. I did have a bit of time for video games when I wasn't dealing with that mess, though, but it was very stilted and kept getting interrupted. So I needed something short and easy to play for most of the week. So for the first half of the week, that was the Shantae Half Genie Hero DLC.
Ooh.
I had it laying around, and they finally finished putting out all the DLC many months ago. And I just now am getting around to the DLC for it. I played the main game when it came out, and it was decent, and the DLC is pretty good too. Most of it is just the main game again, but you can play it with a different outfit for Shantae, and she has totally different abilities and how she has to explore the world. And the rest is alternate characters. There is one pseudo-new campaign that uses some new maps, which is okay, but none of it's really worth the money they charged up front for it when they released it to the people that didn't back the game. I had it all for free anyway, because I was a backer of the original project, but I would not have paid $15 for any of this as it was coming out. But since they've released the super duper hyper mega arcade edition or whatever, they can you can get all that DLC for free, and it's a good time killer if you like that type of game. But it's more Metroidvania stuff. So being on a kick for that, I was like, I need something short and easy to play and felt like staying in the same genre because I just got done with Shantae. So I downloaded Shadow Complex, which is a really old game in this subgenre at this point. It came out like 2012, 2014. And
that
it was
qualifies as really old.
Yeah.
How old are we then?
Dinosaurs. We're getting there.
But
relatively speaking, it was pre the big indie boom in the subgenre that got us like the Hollow Knights of the world and the Shantae revival. So it's got a lot of weird, clunky mechanics, but the clunkiest one actually required me to go in and delete certain files out of the system.
You what?
And have to disconnect my internet when I loaded up a new one to overwrite it and completely turn off cloud saving. Because there is a system in the game where you level up, but it doesn't do anything at first. It increases your precision and accuracy with your guns by a very small amount. But at certain breach points in the leveling curve, which you'll naturally hit as you play through the game, you unlock things like the full map is revealed, and you can see all the secrets everywhere in the entire map. Stuff like that. You take reduced damage, you have huge chunks of bonus health, stuff that makes playing the new game fresh, not very fun, in other words.
Yeah.
And there is no way to reset this level at all. And every new game you start carries over your level.
Oh, that's irritating.
So, the only way to get this thing to reset is to go into the system files, find the save data for the game, kill it entirely, disconnect from the internet, turn off cloud saving in Steam, and then load the game and start a new game and get to a save point.
Oh boy. We know you mean well, Steam, but stop it.
Well, this one's actually Epic's fault. because it's an Epic game that's on the Steam store. And Epic's little pseudo system before the Epic Store became a thing was they had this online service that would keep cloud saves for you.
Yep.
And they know your product ID if it goes online.
Yep.
And will just overwrite whatever the heck you've got if you've got no save data in there. So, in addition, because you can only kill the cloud saves from Steam, that would be easy. Just delete the saves and turn off cloud saves in Steam and start it up again.
Yeah.
But because the Epic thing exists, you have to do this all while disconnected from the internet the entire time until you get to the first save point. Otherwise, Epic will just overwrite your game anyway. Even if you get to a save point after you've completely cleared it, as I found out, it'll say, "Oh, we have this save with better stuff on it, so we're just going to use that." Yeah, it's not a very long game. It's 5 hours ish, so 100% it. If you know the subgenre and kind of can figure out what you're doing, know what walls to shoot to find the secrets.
That's okay.
What looks very conspicuous and probably is a hidden block, stuff like that. So it was a fun little distraction once I got through the hurdles. But yeah, if you need to, for some reason, play that game from scratch again, and you want to actually play it from scratch again and not have the whole map revealed to you, you need to, there's shenanigans involved. And the last game I played, I'll spend a bit of time talking about this, we actually have video for.
Yep, which I've gotten working again, so there you go.
So yeah, is it live?
It is live, although the quality is not quite what I'd like it to be.
It's because you've tied up most of your upline doing the upload.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's I can only output at 720p anyway because I'm not subscribed to Discord Nitro.
Nitro.
So, yeah, this is Rabby Ribby. I talked briefly about this game about a year and a half ago, and the game wasn't done then. The game had the full levels, but it didn't have it filled in with content yet, and it still had DLC coming down the pipe, and they were still patching the game regularly. So I decided to wait. And I remembered it was in my Steam list while I was browsing through. I'm like, I should poke at that game again. So, and the reason I did, if you look at the screen, you will see a sword instead of her stupid little rabbit hammer. That is Dante's sword from Devil May Cry, and is the most downloaded mod for this game.
Of course it is.
Because it is. So, and they added a new difficulty mode after you beat the game called Bunny Must Die. So, yeah. Devil May Cry basically is the reason I'm playing as the rabbit. And playing the rabbit game. So, it's a Metroidvania subgenre game where you run around and you find stuff. But it's mixed with Toho elements and bullet hell games. And specifically Toho, because a lot of the characters are just straight references to it. Like, if I can find it somewhere. No, they're not in the list, because I guess I gotta beat them again. But, like, there's a character that's just Marisa from Toho. Master Spark and everything. Broomstick and star-shaped bullets. Like, she's just Marisa from Toho.
They're not even trying to hide it.
Yeah, no, it's not even subtle. So, I think she has a red hat instead of a black one. Instead of a black outfit, she has a red outfit.
That's about it.
And that's literally the only difference. So, yeah, the boss fights in this game are all bullet hells, and I'll show one to you as we near end of discussion of the video. I'm just kind of hopping around while I'm here to show you stuff in the game.
I'm not sure how well that's going to convey over this image, but we'll give it a go.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. It's already a pixel arty game, but the pixel art is tolerable. It's you can tell what everything is, and it's not super tiny pixel art and low res pixel art with few animations. You can see like Erica's ears flop around and her hair flaps, and Ribbon's little wings beat as she flies. So there's actual animation here. There's not just the staticky pixel art that you see a lot of the time in these type of pixel art games. So it's tolerable. I don't like the pixel art style still. It's a turnoff, but I can tolerate this. This is acceptable as a cost-cutting measure if you just don't have an artist on hand who will work cheap enough to make you proper art assets. So, yeah. So, what was I going to say about this game? The big thing that stood out to me about this game, and the reason I really want to talk about it a lot, is because the developers did something that a lot of developers just don't do anymore. And they listened to their customers as they were updating the game. It turns out a big reason all those updates were taking forever and coming out so frequently is because their customers kept pointing out junk that was annoying and when you have this type of game in this subgenre. And for instance, the biggest one is a mode they called alternative mode. I guess they couldn't think of a better name for it, or it just didn't translate well from whatever the original developer's language is. I think it's Japanese, but I'm not sure. And what alternative mode is, you know how when you're playing a Metroidvania style game, you explore a lot, you'll get a lot of health tanks, and you'll get a lot of weapon power-ups, and you'll exhaust exploring the area before you even think about going in the boss door.
Yep.
This will inevitably lead you to becoming stupid overpowered for whatever boss you're fighting, and you will just be able to face tank everything and just mash the attack button through it. And there's no thought or strategy involved at all. It's the biggest weakness of the genre, is that you just become too powerful for the section of the game you're at. Alternative mode corrects this entirely, and it adds scaling to bosses based on your game progress and items collected. Items are necessary, and that you need to offset the scaling based on your progression, but if you do keep collecting items, the bosses scale with them to a certain extent. Having more items going into a boss fight rather than less will still give you an advantage, but it gives it enough of a course correction to stop any boss from becoming trivial. You still have to learn the attack patterns and be able to dodge at least half the attacks. So, and that's a thing that is very important if you're going to make a bullet hell style boss fight, which we'll show in a bit. And the normal enemies get scaled to a point as well, where they get a flat number increase for every chapter that you're in the game out of the 10 chapters. They don't get a percentage scaling like the bosses do, based on game cleared and items gathered. But they become non-trivial because even the easy enemies, even though they have relatively low health later because of all your upgrades, they will still hit like tanker trucks if you touch them. So you need to stay on the ball as you're exploring instead of just, ignoring everything and taking the hits because you don't care about the enemies in the level anymore. There's no routing. You don't care how you get to a place because you're way too powerful at that point. There's none of that in this game if you play an alternative mode, which is really nice. They also added a difficulty in between Bunny Must Die and normal mode that disables a really dumb mandatory mechanic they had. If I can find it in the buffs and debuffs list, that Halo buff. Damage taken reduced by 10% after 3 game overs. Status removed after Halo boost expires. Does not apply above normal difficulty. They added hard difficulty that is just normal difficulty with that turned off. And the buff gets stronger and stronger as the more times you die. So for some reason they thought this was okay to put on normal mode. That is not what people want, and that is not going to teach you any of the boss mechanics. So they added a difficulty to fix that. They just made really smart decisions like that and listened to their community when they've been like, look, you need to add this, you need to fix this, you need to work around this. And it was really interesting reading the dev history. I'm not going to go over every single change they made because those are the 2 most big ones that come to mind at the point I'm at the game. I've just gotten half of the items in the main game. So I'm a little over the halfway point in progression probably. But yeah, it's an interesting little game, and I've really enjoyed my time with it, and that's really surprising because I expected this just to be a time killer, but I've spent the better part of my free time for the last 3 days chugging my way through it. So I can show you all a boss fight while we do stuff, while we keep talking. But yeah, it's very much so a Toho game. So if you're listening to an audio version uploaded somewhere, which I don't think you even can anymore, you can't see this, but it's very Toho. You can even slow down, and you can see your hitbox in the middle of your throat, just above your chest, if you press and hold the attack button, so you know where the bullets are going to do damage to you. It's hard to do a boss fight and talk at the same time, especially a bullet hell boss fight. But yeah, Vol was watching me play it earlier, so he seemed to be enjoying watching me fight meat on the bones the whole time.
Yes. I'm not very good at those games. I don't mind watching them played, but I'm not. I get frustrated very easily. Usually with falling off things and having to redo parts of a level is what usually bugs me the most.
Yeah, there were spikes everywhere that looked just like regular blades of grass, and this conspicuous enemy called a meat on the bone, or just a meaty bone, but I was calling it meat on the bone because Danganronpa reference. And yeah, it was It was just a piece of meat with a bone sticking out of it with little like stub legs.
Like imagine the well done meat from Monster Hunter, except it's got legs.
And it can shoot its bone at you, and the bone will either boomerang or it will explode.
Because that makes sense, right?
Yeah, and the exploding ones can make destructible ground be destructed to make the floor fall out from underneath you. But yeah. So yeah, you have your melee attacks. Everything you do in the game costs SP for Erica, but you also have Ribbon, who has magic attacks and a bunch of different ways to use magic. And I just ran myself into a corner. And she has an MP bar, so you have to balance your physical and magic attacks by switching between the two a lot, so that you don't exhaust either's resource fully. Because if you exhaust either one fully, you have to wait until it completely recharges for whichever character ran out of juice to attack at all again. And you can see the cute little game over screen because I just died. But yeah, it's an interesting game, and they managed to keep rescaling everything so that nothing is too busted. The only sin it has in this subgenre that hasn't been corrected is the hidden walls. And sometimes walls are just not there, and you can jump right through them, and sometimes you can break them with bullets, and sometimes you can break them with grenades. And there is no real way to tell which one is which.
Oh, that's annoying.
Yeah. So if you played the subgenre before, Vol's like, why are you dropping grenades everywhere? Because this area looks like, and then all of a sudden there was a hidden wall. That. And there was a hidden wall very clearly in a corner that if you played the genre enough, you know there's a hidden wall in the type of area I was in. Like this one right here that I'm jumping in. This is a hidden wall. There was a Easter egg in there, but I already picked it up.
Nice.
So yeah. There are a ton of bosses in this game too. The amount of content they keep adding to it is insane. The base game had 21 full Toho-style bosses.
That's pretty generous.
Which is already impressive for the base game. The DLC adds something like 22, 25 more, plus all the alternate variants of all the old bosses. So a lot of bosses to fight in the game. A lot of levels to explore. All the levels are pretty dang big. Each of the 10 maps holds about, aside from the last 3, the other ones hold anywhere from 3 to 4 levels in them, and each of them is fairly sizable with the little squares you see on the maps as I was scrolling through them real fast right there, not reflective of how big the actual square it represents is, because some of those squares are very small rooms and some of those are very big rooms. The ones that are multiple squares are very, very, very big rooms. So, yeah, there's plenty of stuff to upgrade. You can customize what your character specializes in by using little badges you find, and you can equip up to however many badge points you have. You can get all the upgrades of all time. There's an upgrade that does almost anything you could think of in the game, and you can upgrade those upgrades to do even better upgrades that make you be able to get to stuff you really shouldn't be able to get to ahead of time. Like the Mari sub-boss I mentioned earlier, I fought her way before I was supposed to, and she kicked my butt for 3 hours straight, but I decided to just keep going, and the game was totally fine with that. The game even acknowledged that, how the heck did you get here this early? You aren't supposed to be here, so it knows about stuff if you sequence break it, which is something that can just happen in the subgenre if you casually play it enough. And apparently they expected that. I don't know if that was something they put in later when enough people were saying, hey, I accidentally stumbled on blank and got my butt kicked, but you know, it was just nice to see them acknowledge that that's a thing and that it's okay for you to do that without having to worry about the game breaking because the game knows about it. So a lot of positive stuff to say. The only real thing, other legitimate complaint I have is the lighting is kind of bad in some areas, like really bad. The lighting can get, this is a darker zone. This is not great lighting, but there's one zone that I was in right before the show started that was just bright light the whole way through that added a bloom effect to everything. And it was just painful on the eyes to sit through. So there are 2 areas I found like that, but in a game with a billion different areas in it, that ain't too bad. So if only 2 of them are in particular bad with their lighting, I'm not going to give it too much crap. But yeah, that's Rabby Ribby with it. I'll still have to finish the game to give full thoughts on the game, but for now, it's a decent purchase for like $15.
Pretty generous for $15, yeah.
Yeah, so it's another scenario of, while they didn't have as much as Hollow Knight did coming out, and they were not complete when they came out, they've caught up to that same tier of you just get a ton of content for your money.
Right,
and it's all fairly good, high quality stuff. So yeah, I've been impressed with it. I recommend it to people that like the subgenre or the Toho games, because it pretty much is the same. You just have to aim your attacks differently than you would in a bullet hell, because you're not shooting in a straight line above you. You're having to platform and dodge the bullets in a platform style instead of a flying spaceship style. So yeah, that's the video game, and that's pretty much all I did for my week. Was complain about the government and play Metroidvanias.
All right. Well, City of Heroes seems to be doing extremely strange things at the moment.
Yeah.
What is it? What on earth is it doing? It's just reset me to a random place.
Stone Talent?
Not quite.
Yep. So,
yeah, there we go. I think I'm supposed to be going that way. So, yeah. In that case, it is probably time to take a break.
Yep, we're 15 minutes over, but we tangented, so that's okay.
That we
will be right back after some Muzak. And we're back.
Yes, indeedy.
Got it.
Beat
that boss with Max.
You got the boss. Nice.
At max rank.
Nice. You beat the booby flower.
Yeah. It's probably a good thing we cut the stream off there because that flower boss ain't wearing nothing.
Yeah,
except the flower.
Her character art is not safe for work.
Well, I mean, you can't see anything, but she's not wearing anything.
Yeah. Alrighty. So, what's next? We're done with the weeks, so we actually have an email there.
Yep. Email?
Yes, indeedy.
Email.
And now I'm just finding this boss here. There we go. Woohoo!
Right. So, I'm going to read this because those other two have made a total hash of the last couple of emails that they've been asked to read.
It's been a while since you've done one anyway.
It's rough listening to you two. It frustrates me greatly.
I can't read out loud and multitask. It doesn't work.
I'm not teleprompter trained at all. I don't do well with two language channels going in my brain.
So, this email is from our good buddy Serathis, and he writes, "Dear No Excuses, first things first, please don't ever do the Woody Woodpecker laugh ever again, or I'll illegally sneak into the US, find out where Ari lives, tie him to a chair, and play the Sonic 2 drowning music on loop until he apologizes or expires."
Tell you what, if he ever does it again, Serathis, we'll split the difference. The three of us will meet up in Singapore or something, and then we'll go tie Ari to a chair.
Ain't gonna be that hard. I'm usually in a chair to begin with.
Okay, so maybe we just skip the tying part.
So, about that 8.3 patch on WoW that is supposed to keep everyone going until Shadowbringers drop sometime in September. Guys, it's bad. Real bad. Remember how the Dragon Soul update was a low-budget, asset reusing patch where the new stuff was Wormrest Temple, the dungeon, Wormrest Temple, the dungeon again, Wormrest Temple, Death of Chromie, Wormrest Temple, Raid, and Well of Eternity? Well, 8.3 is worse, as it has no new zones or dungeons. It has a reused Orgrimmar and Stormwind, and a Raid. Now, the Raid actually looks cool. Too bad it is the ending for the entire Old God storyline for WoW. You know the stuff that has been building up, arguably since the Frozen Throne and picked up speed since Legion? That stuff should have been its own... That's stuff that should have been its own expansion. World of Warcraft, the Black Empire, where the artists and level designers can really go all out. Non-Euclidean geometry, for example, Lovecraftian horrors threatening to destroy everything forever. Instead, the whole shebang is dealt with in a 20-second in-game cinematic that is equal parts Dragon Ball, Power of Friendship and lasers, and Sauron's tower collapsing. Words
and low budget.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a moment.
Words or expressions consisting of multiple words cannot describe the levels of disappoint we had. The reasons are many and varied, most of the speculation pointing towards everyone working on Shadowlands. The only cool thing about the patch is the horrific visions. Too bad you get 3 entries per week. A raid won't last people 7 to 8 months for sure. I can already see myself going back to catboying in FF14, quite possibly even before Doom Eternal drops in late March. Speaking of Doom, I haven't pestered you lot about the glorious PC gaming modern master race's oldest entry for like 5 emails. Allow me to rectify that. As you may or may not know, most maps in Doom are fairly abstract. Their levels might look like they take place in a city or a starbase or in hell, but they, by themselves, don't make any sense. Very few map sets are made in a realistic style where a house might have a bedroom or a dinner table. Apparently, realistic levels are called Doom Cute in the modding community, and the latest and greatest is Lost Civilization. 30 expensive, hugely varied levels, ranging from caves to beaches to a very finely detailed manor, castles, farms, cities. There is even a day and night cycle as you head forward. Additionally, the maps themselves look beautiful and play well. I would say Lost Civilization is one of the best map packs I have played for Doom. But what if a map is all you have? I have come across Radio Commander, where, as you might guess, you are commanding platoons of soldiers, and sometimes helis, in Vietnam. You pin markers on the map and move them by hand, but you only know what your guys in the field report to you. You will be asking for constant status updates, trying to figure out if those 3 VC squads spotted are in fact 3 enemy squads, or the same bunch spotted 3 times, and if your guys should open fire on fleeing civilians, as they might be warning the enemy to your presence. Yeah, there are story bits in the missions. The Delta Force guys, for example, are particularly fond of enhanced interrogation techniques, for example. I would say it is certainly an interesting game concept. check it out if you want to play an RTS without actually seeing the battlefield. Seraphis.
That does sound interesting. All right, so let's start with 8.3.
Yeah.
All right, look at it this way. In the live show chat host, I just posted a video that was put up this morning by Carbot, who does these really very simple, very dumb animations for Blizzard franchises. That video is only about 20 seconds long, and it sums up the entire conclusion and is probably actually better.
I'll have to turn it on.
You guys just go watch that while I talk about this, but I've had a couple of conversations with people about this patch, and the reactions have been far from good. For example, the entire ending cutscene has basically been ripping off the final scene from Return of the King, the movie, and looks like it was pushed out in a weekend. Not good. Is not good at all.
Yeah, that sums it up pretty good, I think. Yeah. I only watched 25 seconds of it because I can't hear you while watching that, but it makes sense to me.
The stupid sound effects. Yeah, giant lasers out of nowhere, eyeballs falling over. That's about it. Everything is happy all of a sudden because reasons. I do like.
Wasn't there like a plot line about the inability of people to destroy the old gods because the disintegration of Azeroth? Since
yes.
The tendrils are basically holding it together at this point.
Yes, there was that storyline. I think we've just forgotten about that entirely, haven't we? Or has it been?
I don't know.
Has it been visited by the retcon fairy?
I don't
part
know.
Of Warcraft has been visited by the retcon fairy.
Yeah, it has.
Like literally every part of it. The whole RPG book has been retcon, which is where most of the old lore came from. So I mean that literally. I don't mean that figuratively.
Yeah. You can go actually back and read some of the source material at the beginning of WoW, or even some of the stuff in Cataclysm, and a lot of that is just gone now. It's been retconned. But I like the idea of the Black Empire expansion, like an entire expansion where you visit the world of the old gods and go into what's going on there. That sounds cool. Why couldn't we do that?
The thing is that they did sort of. The issue is that they have destroyed that opportunity.
Yes.
It's not that they didn't take it, it's that they destroyed it because essentially they have rendered down the Black Empire into those parts of Nyalotha that make up the raid. And that's all.
And that's
despite the fact that it was supposed to like cover the majority of the face of Azeroth sort of thing once upon a time before sinking beneath the surface, never to be seen again.
Mm-hmm.
Like
it was the same thing with the Nerubian Empire that was tangentially related.
Which was another idea for a cool expansion, by the way.
Well, that's the Nerubian sort of got, owned by the undead.
Yeah, that was a thing that kind of happened. It was supposed to be a zone in Lich King, wasn't it? And they got axed.
Yeah, we were supposed to go there and see like all the Spider Kingdom, and it was supposed to be happy fun times in Spiderland.
And kill level 62 at Nubarak.
Yeah, Nubarak was going to be there.
I can't remember. Play a Lodi mob.
Yeah, they built that stuff up since Warcraft 3 is when they were really setting up the Nerubians and just dropped it. Didn't care.
Yeah, they ran out of time or something. That was before the point where they were just outright lazy.
And Nubarak is canonically the strongest person in Warcraft 3, by the way.
Yeah,
just gonna keep pointing that out.
No, he's the low-level 5-man boss. What are you talking about? I've seen it.
World of Warcraft. He got fat.
Seen it.
He comes back as a high-level raid boss in a really crap dungeon that nobody actually remembers.
Because every single fan of Nubarak was like, my dudes, what the heck did you just do to my Spider-Man?
What did you do to Mr. Beatles?
So what, they put him into the worst raid in the expansion?
Yes.
Yeah, like, we'll give him a proper raid version, guys. Don't worry. We'll fix this.
To be fair, actually, you've got a choice of selection for worst raid of that expansion.
I don't know about that.
Colosseum was bad.
I forgot there was that dragon one.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that was bad.
Well, you just have to kill like 1 million dragonkin and then fight a boss.
Yeah. It really had one exceptional raid, and that was Uldar.
Ice Crown was okay.
Ice Crown was alright. It had some bits that were more annoying than anything else.
Uldar does stand out because Uldar was so good, but it had some decent raid moments. And even Obsidian Sanctum, with its being a one-off boss, an Ixia-style raid, just because it had that timed loot mechanic and your variable difficulty, I think that gives it quite a few points.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. But anyway, 8.3. Oh, wow. People are just not happy at all with this expansion. Everything that's in it is either not functioning or just boring. Except for the divisions.
Well, I am inclined towards the assumption that Blizzard have basically abandoned it. Like, the reason why it was so incomplete and feature light is because they abandoned it partway through development.
Yeah.
They realised that they screwed the pooch in a big way, and that there was no... Like, people weren't going to put up with them drawing the process out anymore. Mm-hmm. Because in order to... and I think that they got their pacing off as well, because in order to tell that story, there should have been an extra tier, because they hadn't resolved enough plot lines for the city of Nyalotha to be a real thing. They had left everything up in the air. They'd tried to be too clever with the storyline. They were ultimately headed for what would be an overcomplicated twist ending, and when their schedule contracted, they basically had no choice but to abandon their plans and concertina their existing content into, a sort of a rump of a patch that comes in at the end of the expansion. And the real issue is the amount of attrition that they're going to suffer as a result.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was bad, and they've wasted a lot of opportunities, but they've had zero shame in retconning things in order to solve that problem in the past. So I can believe them doing it again. But so you could just say, oh well, I mean, Shadowlands is a thing, and we don't really have a timeline for Sylvanas messing with the fabric of reality. It's one of those things that happens ambiguously, right? Like, the opening movie of Wrath of the Lich King shows that, Arthas is out there, he's raising up Sindragosa, he's making ready to make war on Azeroth. You don't know exactly when that happens, and it sort of can be reasonably assumed that it happens while everybody's off busy doing other things.
Yeah, presumably while everyone's busy with the Legion.
The thing, the one saving throw that they've really got that they can exploit ruthlessly and will need to if they care about making the story even a shadow of coherent, would be, nobody knows exactly what Sylvanas' timeline is when she, wanders off to Ice Crown and rips the sky open and basically causes the entirety of reality itself to destabilize. Since that's a transition which pretty much everybody should be going through, passing from living to dead. Including the bad guys that you're killing, should all be making that same transition. It gives you the opportunity to pull a lot of saving throw bullcrap to rescue your dismembered plot lines.
Dismembered is putting it nicely.
But I don't know. Maybe they'll just call it, just give it up as a bad job all round, because they have done a bad job of it. They've made a huge mess, and I think it was because they wrote it. They wrote it Lost style, where they just tried to be really clever and have lots of dangling plot threads, and then realized that they didn't have the time or inclination to solve the problem because they didn't have a plan when they started.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just the writers have got delusions that they're actually writers. Because it's not the writing staff that do things like the books. They write material, but they don't decide the plot. The plot's decided for them, and they write around it. The people who are deciding the plot are not writers, but they have delusions that they are writers. It's the same way, like, video games journalists have the delusion that they're journalists. Video games writers have the delusion that they're writers, and most of them are nowhere near good enough to be writers. Even for their own medium.
It does make the ones who actually are good writers shine all the brighter, I suppose.
Yeah, but what you expect from a video game is lowbrow stuff at best, and usually you don't even manage to get that. In World of Warcraft, it has allowed, and I think that this applies to every aspect of development, it has allowed people to develop ideas above their station. Like, they think that they're better than they are simply because they happen to work for a juggernaut, so they see success as a result of their actions as opposed to in spite of it, and then they start to get the idea that they are the hot stuff. And I think that a lot of what happened in Battle for Azeroth is people thinking they're hot stuff and making unilateral changes, whether to story or to mechanics, and just thinking that they know better, and then they push forward with a terrible idea. Everybody hates it, and they can't undo it until enough people show up who in management who are able to push around that particular person's creative direction. And so you've got things like they're putting a whole bunch of cooldowns and stuff on the global cooldown again, like a move which was universally disliked.
Office, it's got to be the case. There's no way these same people would be like, oh, I done goofed. Well, we better start working towards a solution. We got to wait for some of the higher ups to go, why are we not making money, before they even consider fixing the problem.
Yeah, and Blizzard seems to have some pretty serious in-house issues as it is. Like the exploitation of their own workers, and they're constantly firing people and then rehiring for the same job and that type of thing. Like, they're a mess. And we're going to talk even more about how they are a mess once we're done with this email.
You may remember a leak from 4chan about the state of Blizzard, and we're like, oh well, it's just a leak. We don't know for surezies that it's as bad as this guy claims. But no, with the recent release this week and how well that's gone, we can see that's exactly what's happening over there, and he was pretty spot on.
Yeah, it's not looking good over there. And it's showing in their product, unfortunately. Anyway. Patch 8.3. Well, basically missed potential again.
Yeah, they could have... well, the thing is that I know that they could do a better job than they did do, but I'm not actually sure that they could do a good job given the foundations they were building on. Like, that they would... the thing is that they're always claiming that they've written the story out for a great deal of time in advance, but it also seems like at the same time as doing that on a daily basis, they change their mind about the now, so that entire story ends up getting rewritten, and it just ends up being a mess because they don't want to give up their old ideas.
Because of the way their structure of setting up writers and storytelling works, all it takes is they very well might have had, Metzin's Bible with the RPG books about where they're going, but the second some guy said, I got a great idea, and all that got flushed. Eventually,
a beer.
Well, that's what every idea like that is. It's a, hey, hold my beer moment.
Yeah. It's not quite Florida Man, but it's getting there.
There's an achievement in Borderlands 3 called Florida Man.
Does it involve ram raiding a police station to complain about your meth?
No, it involves killing yourself with a grenade, one of your own grenades.
That works too. So anyway, Doom mods. Anything to talk about Doom mods?
Until I get around to actually playing them, probably not.
Yeah, Doom is so not my wheelhouse.
I don't mind a bit of mindless shooty bang, but it's been so long since I've really done Doom.
Well, I typed in Lost Civilization to look at it on a mod site, and it doesn't look anything like Doom. I might be looking at the wrong thing, because this is so far from being Doom that I think that I've actually accidentally hit the wrong thing.
I'm
wrong
just
target
wondering,
here.
some of these mods get so big and complex that I'm wondering how much of the original game is actually still in there.
I'm going to try another search, because I must have gotten a mod for a different game. That's way too not Doom. Okay, let's try this again. It's a different search result, because I want to see what he's describing here. Because the idea of like tables and chairs and Doom is sort of a bit...
That's a bit sorcery-like.
It's uncanny. Okay, here we go.
Furniture in Doom?
For some reason, the idea of there being greenery in Doom I find kind of upsetting.
And not just green sludge, you mean?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I'm just taking a look at these screenshots as well, and yeah,
There are
that's
trees.
interesting. Trees?
There are trees. And grass. Doom doesn't have trees and grass. What is this?
What sorcery is this? It does have upside down pyramids, so at least that fits in line with everything else.
And pot plants.
Furniture?
Flowers.
Flowers. What monster created this?
Flowers are not a Doom thing.
No.
I mean, it looks interesting.
It looks really good, actually.
Yeah, like they've clearly put a lot of work into it. But
Oh, here we go. Flaming barrel and random rockets laying on the ground. That's more Doom-like.
yeah, it's interesting. If I remember, which I almost certainly won't, I might take a look at this one.
It actually almost... Some of these bits actually look almost Serious Sam-like.
But these levels look like I'm just going to get lost within like 5 minutes and never find my way out again.
Oh, yeah.
They look so complicated. But Doom maps traditionally have been designed that there's a particular way through them. These ones look a bit more freeform, so maybe it doesn't matter if you get lost.
Yeah. Huh. So I'm actually just on the screen here. I haven't really done this line of the Praetorian quest line in City of Heroes before. This is the G-Man from Half-Life. There's no mistaking it. He's just the G-Man. He's got the suit. He's got the same creepy face. He doesn't have the briefcase. That's it.
I see.
He's just called Mr. G. Anyway. So, let me see. Is there anything else for that email? No. So, yeah, one of these days I think we're just going to have to sit down and stream a bunch of Doom mods if we can ever get them working.
I haven't had too much trouble getting them working in the past, except where occasionally there have been some that seem to trigger my computer to have a hernia for no reason.
Yeah, you run into those. But I'm more thinking, like, first and foremost, multiplayer. And having them not explode for that. And then trying to link the streaming and recording software to it. Either of those could cause everything just catch fire and die, so...
That's generally what happens when we try to stream anything.
Yeah.
Is dead people.
Things go horribly, horribly wrong. There is fire, there is screaming. Speaking of fire and screaming, shall we get into the news?
Yeah, although... Well, yeah, that'll work.
Tangent away.
So, Blizzard put out a remake of a beloved game this week.
Oh dear. Yes, they did.
Well, more like put a shank in the back of a beloved game this week.
Yeah, nobody informed us they would literally be killing the old game while they were at it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you think you want to play the old game, but you don't.
Just go play the old game.
Yeah, you know, your WoW Classic server's still over capacity of what you estimated the peak launch being. Nobody wants your old stuff. They clearly want your new creative direction. So the Warcraft 3 remake came out. Warcraft 3 Reforged.
Which initially I was interested in. I was kind of excited for it when they first announced it.
I am so glad my opinion on this was, that could be okay. We'll wait and see.
Yeah, well, as time went on, it's because, hang on, Blizzard's ruined something. They've ruined something else.
Blizzarding again.
They're blizzarding. They've just hemorrhaged half of their stuff. I'm not excited for this game anymore.
It's like, Dora the Explorer's swiper stop swiping. Blizzard stop blizzarding.
Remember when Blizzard used to be the mark of quality, where they'd release a game only after they'd polished it, and then polished it, and then polished it some more?
Yeah. Then remember when, 2010 happened, and digital distribution became a thing, and finishing your games became optional?
Oh, I remember.
Now I'm depressed.
Yeah, those days are gone. So, we have now got a game on our hands which should have been a home run. But instead...
An easy home run.
Yeah.
We need to emphasize just how easy a home run this was. This was set up on the tee with a rocket booster on the ball, easy home run.
Yeah, what people wanted was Warcraft 3 with a few bug fixes and a fresh coat of paint.
They didn't even want the bug fixes. They just wanted a fresh coat of paint.
Mostly the fresh coat of paint, yeah. Because they've actually been fixing the bugs as they've been going along. But what we got is... it is the game that now has officially the worst score on Metacritic of all time.
Of all AAA games. Yep.
Well, I mean, and this is largely, a product of them marketing it on lies. Like, you don't... I feel like this, as bad as the game as delivered is, the reason for the low rating is the marketing, not the game itself, as appalling as that is. It's about the fact that they promised to deliver one thing and delivered something wholly different.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't the marketing, it was certainly their response to it, which I don't think they made an official statement about, but they have certainly spoken with their actions. And the biggest one being banning people who are telling people how to get a refund or asking for a refund or anything with the word refund in it.
Well, apparently there are still trailers, official Blizzard trailers that are up online that you can go look at for promoting this game, which show cutscenes that aren't actually in the game.
Yeah.
But that's deceptive.
Yes.
That's demonstrably deceptive. Like, that's opening yourself up to a lawsuit for false advertising deceptive. Like, the whole thing is just a mess. So basically, lots and lots of people were really excited for what they were shown.
Mm-hmm.
And what they were shown, I don't know what it was that was shown. It looked like perhaps it was an in-house Blizzard mock-up of what they hoped to produce. Something that somebody had modeled on some engine that they had.
Yeah. That stuff was done 2 years ago now?
But what actually happens in practice is that they outsource it to another company. Can't remember what they're called now. It's got lemon in the name. I don't remember
of course
the details.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is,
appropriate.
it was outsourced to the same guys who did all of the redrawing of the sprites for. Oh, it's called Lemon Sky. It was they did all the redrawing of the sprites for the StarCraft HD re-release. The quite well-regarded, successful re-release.
Yeah.
That looks really nice, and the sprites look great. That's fine.
Yep.
So it was outsourced to them, but a project like this needs to be very heavily overseen by Blizzard.
Mm-hmm.
And what it looks like is that overseeing process at some point completely disintegrated. Because what was produced, if you look at the way the models have been redone for the new Warcraft 3 re-release, they don't look like Blizzard art anymore. They look like generic mobile game characters that you would get out of a typical Chinese developer.
Oh, yeah, okay. I can see that, but damn, that's harsh.
But that's what it looks like, right? It looks like somebody has been told to make a Warcraft game, but they don't have any art directors from Blizzard making sure that it looks like one.
Yeah.
They've just got this, as a reference, they've just got this existing product with its rather crude polygonal models, and they're updating it, but they aren't updating it in line with the Blizzard creative vision for what Warcraft characters look like. So you very clearly have communicated to you the look of Warcraft characters by the trailer that was shown off by Blizzard, but there's none of that character in what was actually delivered. And basically none of the cutscenes they promised, the 4 hours of cutscenes they promised, were delivered. That didn't happen. Mm-hmm. Cutscenes that had been shown off in the past for promotional material were not in the game at all. They were replaced by the exact same execution that Warcraft 3 used previously, which was, your overhead view from the RTS that you'd normally expect with the talking heads and text down the bottom. They just did the same thing. They
even bothered to replace the cutscene at all.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is that they just viewed the model. The only other cutscene that they did, they did one other cutscene, and it was the one for the big fight between Arthas and Illidan.
Okay.
They redid that one. However, rather than properly redoing it, which involves creating animation rigs and then shot-by-shot direction on the animation to ensure that things look right, they took the existing rigs for the existing models and just pantomimed them in the form of the fight that they have. So it looks really, really super cringy. One of the YouTubers that I watched a piece on said that their in-house animation guy was in stitches laughing at it.
I bet he was.
Because it was that bad.
What beats me is this for the big story moment cutscenes that they've previously re-rendered. Those cutscenes still look fine.
Well,
that's how good those.
No, but when I'm talking about cutscenes, I'm talking about the important in-game, in-game stuff, like the confrontation between Arthas and Illidan was not a pre-rendered cinematic. It was built an engine, except that they built animation rigs for it. And then you've got other scenes that are important, like the confrontations between characters that are sort of interpersonal things, that sort of thing. That was all done in engine.
Right.
So that's what we're talking about in terms of redoing cutscenes to be a bit glossier. But it's all moot now since none of it actually happened at all. Never mind that there were pre-orders out for it based on the premise that these would be things included in the product or any of that crap. None of that happened. The whole thing was a complete disaster in terms of deliverables. Apparently, it runs like hot garbage.
Yes.
Like on a reasonably powerful computer, you can barely scratch anything over 30 frames per second. It's just highly, highly unoptimized. It's a complete mess.
This apparently gets even worse with the cutscenes that are very clearly just ported from the old Warcraft 3, like the introductory cutscene, which is just ported 1-to-1. It will cause some games to just crash on some graphics cards, that cutscene, for some reason.
Well, because the cutscene was originally in like 240p or something crap like that.
Yeah.
And
So-
they've upscaled it. But whether or not they actually tested whether that upscale would function well on a range of graphics cards, well, I don't know.
Apparently not.
Yeah, I'm about to say, I think it's pretty obvious they didn't.
But yeah, so in terms of appearance, it is because of the lack of cohesiveness in the visual direction. It's not even arguable. The original Warcraft 3 looks better than the updated re-release. The new one may have a higher poly count, but since there's no cohesion to the art design, there's not a better look accomplished. So the entire thing just looks murky and nasty, and it doesn't look nice.
It's a mess.
It doesn't run well. And apparently it devours your system as well, wherever given half an opportunity. I saw a tweet online saying that saying a guy had looked into the main menu performance, because apparently the main menu is something that performs really badly and is super janky, and apparently the whole main menu system is just a web app running on Chrome that's been pasted over the game.
But why?
I don't know. I don't know enough about coding to determine why somebody might come to the conclusion that was a good idea. Maybe there's some advantage offered and they were just blinded by it. Or maybe they were just lazy. Yeah, it could have been something like... Well, I mean, you could say make it over lunch and knock off early, or you could say that they were suddenly put under an unreasonable time and budget constraint.
That sounds more like it.
So, this is something that Blizzard has contracted them to do. We don't know exactly what exchanged between Blizzard and Lemon Sky, how things ended up like this, because they did a great job on StarCraft, but in this case, the entire thing has been a disaster. So, that's one facet of the disaster, because there are many facets to this disaster.
Disaster facets, yes.
The second major one is the matter of, well, let's start with what they have done to extant Warcraft 3.
Yeah, so when you actually purchased the remaster, they also included a copy of old Warcraft 3, by the way.
But it doesn't matter. Because it doesn't matter where you got your copy of old Warcraft 3. It doesn't matter whether you've got it on the Blizzard launcher or whether you've got it on disc. No matter which way you slice it, they've destroyed it pretty much. If you allow your copy of Warcraft 3 to come into contact with the Blizzard launcher at any point, the poor thing would get lobotomized. And since old school BattleNet no longer exists at all, you can't, if you've got a disc version, the only thing you can do with it is LAN play, pretty much. Single player and LAN play. So maybe we'll see a resurgence in using those third party LAN simulation software things. I don't know, but if you have a copy of the BattleNet version, you have not been permitted to keep it intact. along with the release of Warcraft 3 Reforged, which everybody is of course calling Warcraft 3 Refunded, which is another kettle of fish. When this was released, everybody who had the original Warcraft 3 was made to download 30 gigabytes of Warcraft 3 Reforged assets that they can't use because they don't own the game.
Yep, but you still got to download them anyway.
Yep, and those will sit on your hard drive and rot. And the existing multiplayer system has been overhauled and replaced by the new one.
Yeah, overhauled's not the word I'd use.
Yeah, well, overhauled in the sense that they completely took it apart and tried to put it back together, but had lost the blueprints at some point.
Yeah,
so they've reassembled this, and so there are now no longer any automated tournaments. There are no clans, there are no profiles, no ladder, no 3D campaign backgrounds can be put in. The map editor doesn't support it. No animated portraits in BattleNet. No slash commands in BattleNet chat. No communal channels listing. No custom campaigns. No news section on BattleNet. The Reign of Chaos campaign doesn't roll back to Frozen Throne anymore. It uses the unit balance from Frozen Throne.
Ooh, that's bad.
Yeah. The interface hasn't been revamped. Any existing problems are still there. It's only the things that weren't problems that have been, quote, fixed, unquote. Generally speaking, it's been a huge mess, and you cannot go back to the way it was before.
My absolute favorite one was there are no more shadows.
Is it?
You can't enable shadows unless you have Reforged. It says Reforged mode required to turn on shadows.
Oh, why? The game would look flat. Very flat without shadows.
And it would still look better.
And well, it would still look better.
That's the thing. But yeah, so they've completely torn the guts out of the old game to the point where they're basically trying to force you to buy the new one, but you don't want to buy the new one because it's a piece of garbage. So of course people are very upset about this. They want refunds, and Blizzard has. I don't have any good solid evidence on this, but the initial line shortly after release was Blizzard was claiming that they aren't going to give out refunds because reasons, and that you have to apply US consumer law to it. You can't apply your local consumer law, which, as far as I am aware, is one big stinking pile of bullcrap.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
In fact, Blizzard themselves have been burned by that before.
Yeah, it's in the nature of Australian consumer law that it supersedes any such codicil.
Yeah, and you have to abide by that if you want to sell your product in those nations. And New Zealand is not as rigorous as Australia, but we still have very, very powerful consumer laws.
Yeah.
But they're running up against that angle, and there's another facet, and one that has possibly gotten the bulk of the outrage other than the fact that the product itself is a piece of crap.
Almost.
The other thing is that there are three things that gave Warcraft 3 the legs that it had. The first was the campaigns, because the universe just had a lot of fans and it gained even more. The second is the multiplayer, and the third and major one is custom maps.
Yes.
Remember
Dota and Tower Defense? Yeah. That's where they came from.
So Tower Defense was from
StarCraft. Yeah, but same thing applies.
Yeah, so before we dive into this one, it's worth noting that what we're about to talk about, what Blizzard did, may be fairly standard for games nowadays, but there's a reason you don't see Dotas anymore. Yeah, you can't... well, I'll let Vol explain it, because he probably has a better reference point than I do. But
so basically, they changed the end-user license agreement for the game, and including, I believe, rolling back those changes to all previous versions of Warcraft 3. And they basically state that any map created by any user belongs to Blizzard, and in its utter entirety, they can take them, they can use them, they can take the ideas, lobotomize them, use them to release a game of their own design, which is copied from something that's been come up with by a player using the map. Basically, you become the Blizzard brain trust, and you're entitled to zero compensation no matter how good your product is that you devise using their map editor and put out into the community. It becomes Blizzard's, and they can profit off of it, and you, in fact, will be sued if you attempt to use it in any way, because you'll be infringing on their copyright. You are providing material for their copyright.
They don't want Dota to happen again.
But the thing, that's the thing though, right? That's the reason. Everybody can see that, right? Yeah. It's about Defense of the Ancients, about Defense of the Ancients being super popular and them failing to retain the rights to it and losing out there to their competitors. And it just seems like doing this is like, I understand why they did it, but the way they did it makes them seem unbelievably petty.
If this was the only problem with it, nobody would have really minded too much.
Yeah, but it would have been a single-player game.
Yeah.
Yeah, people would have just seen it as a single-player game, because I think that a lot of people wanted Dota under a new skin.
Yeah, original Dota under with a fresh coat of paint. Yes, please.
The additional corollary to that is that Blizzard will just remove anything using copyright material.
Because of course they will.
So if you name a character in one of your custom maps after some other third-party IP, that's it. It's over. So not only Dota, but all the Infos maps, all the Dragon Ball Z maps, all those maps that were popular in custom games, they're all gone. Gone. They'll just get removed instantly because the Blizzard lawyers say so. And it's something that is more or less necessary to do these days, because the very fraught legal and IP enforcement environment, the DMCA has had a very heavy distorting effect on video games as a whole over the past 20 years or so. But the situation is one where Blizzard were offering to sell people Warcraft 3, but the reality is that they didn't own Warcraft 3. Not the Warcraft 3 that people remember. They don't own that, because so much of that was like Vanilla WoW, a product of its time, but it existed in gaps in the law that don't exist anymore.
Mm.
And that particular product, as it existed back then, Blizzard never had the rights to. They never owned that. That was something created by the community. And they could not sell that because they didn't make it to begin with. It wasn't part of their product. Their product was the campaign and the infrastructure to play multiplayer. That was it. That was the part that Blizzard owned. Blizzard didn't own any of the other stuff. And essentially, Blizzard didn't own the stuff that made Warcraft 3 popular. That wasn't theirs. You can't buy that from them. They can't sell it. They can't even offer it. But they had projected that they were going to offer something that was essentially a skin. But because it wasn't essentially a skin, we're in this situation where they've sold a product that everywhere where it is not incomplete, it is inferior.
Yeah. Oh boy.
This is just basically an example of the worst possible thing that they could have done.
Yeah.
The worst. Cancelling it would have been better.
Cancelling it would have been much better. It would have been such an easy thing too. Like, if they just put Warcraft 3 and gave it a fresh coat of paint, fine. Ported it over to the StarCraft 2 engine, fine. Update a few things here and there, okay. But there's a lot of things they could have gotten away with. People would have forgiven them for a lot on this.
Yeah, but the thing is that they did everything in the worst possible way.
Yeah.
They didn't just cut features. They didn't just, cancel it. And I think cancellation would have been the best possible action they could take if this was the best product that they could make, given time constraints, given budgetary constraints, given their developer resourcing. If this is the product that you crap out, then just cancel it. Cancel it. It would be better for you if you cancelled it. The same way it would have been better for them if they'd cancelled Diablo Immortal. Because by releasing this, they've created a huge amount of bad blood. They're now going to be in the running for the worst video games developer company of the 2020s. And they have killed all possibility of the millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars that they would have made off of a new engine for Diablo 2.
Yeah, like they've had games in the past which were much more complete, much more promising, that they've cancelled.
But by releasing this as it is not just that they have failed on this count, but they have completely gelded themselves as far as producing any other similar reforgings of previous titles. Yep. Because if they then came out and announced Diablo 2 Reforged, 6 months ago, if they had announced that, can you imagine the fervor in the community?
Oh, you would not get a word in otherwise.
But can you imagine what they would be like if they announced it tomorrow?
Oh, the memes would already be posted all over Twitter.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to move for the memes. You'd be drowning in memes. But no, yeah. It seems like the reality here is that Blizzard have looked at Bethesda and they've looked at Fallout 76 and said, "Hold my beer."
Not a hold my beer moment.
So it's not fair if we let Epic take all of the attention for being corporate scumbags. It's not fair if we let Bethesda take all the attention for releasing a crappy phoned-in game full of bugs which doesn't work properly and was conceptually a disaster. We need to hold those titles.
Hold my beer indeed. Oh, jeez. Thing is, though, at this point...
Outside, so I'm back now.
At this point, though, the damage is done. I don't think there's any saving the game from this point.
No, we're sitting on a cool 0.5 user score on Metacritic. I mean...
Let me see if I can find...
There's a pretty clear message being sent from the community there.
Yeah.
Let me see if... They've got an all-time high PC scores ready to go, but they do not have an all-time low. Let's see. Can I find anything else that's gotten such a bad score?
There's a point in your life, if you're a professional, when you used to be, you would have to do some soul searching if you done goofed this bad, or you would have to just resign yourself to the fact you got to hang it up or you're going to get fired.
Yeah.
In today's current climate, I don't know that that's a reality anymore.
Let's see. Metacritic's recent game, and by recent they're being very generous, probably Simulacra for the PS4 got a 1.3 as the next highest score. And that game is absolute trash. Because it's a phone port game they've stuck on the PS4. Let me see if I can go to all time. Let's see. Worst scores of all time.
Of all time.
All time. When Metacritic finishes freaking out.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing with Metacritic. It's just so slow.
Yeah.
All the time. I don't know how people use it regularly.
All right. We have NBA 2020 on the Xbox One and the PS4 at 0.9, FIFA 20 for the Xbone, the Switch at 0.9, or WWE 2020 at 1. WWE 2020 is hilariously broken.
Yeah, Fallout 76 has a 2.7 apparently.
Yeah, Fallout 76 is 2.7. Ride to Hell Retribution is 1.2.
I think the only reason that one is so low is because it's a meme. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gotten any attention whatsoever.
It would have just kind of fizzled out in the mediocrity area, yeah. Star Wars Battlefront 2, 1.2.
FIFA 20.
Let me see. The recent Ghostbusters game based on Fembusters, 1.3. Now we're starting.
What about that awful basketball game?
You'll have to be more specific on that.
NBA 2K20.
Yeah, that's 0.9. I don't think this all-time list has actually been updated for with Warcraft Reforged on it.
Regardless, that's getting out into the weeds. The point is, it's a complete pile of garbage, and Blizzard deserves the commercial sodomizing that they're fixing to get. There's basically, this is the point at which, like, you can pound the final nail in that coffin. Blizzard is dead. There is no vestige left of the Blizzard that the people of our generation were familiar with back in the day. It's not there anymore.
It's dead.
None of it is there. And it's not. It has always been dead for a long time, but now you can, like I said, pound that final nail into the coffin. It's not coming back. There's nothing left. Nothing to recoup it. If it rises again in 10 years and becomes a great gaming company again, it will not be the same company still.
We won't see that without a full industry crash.
Yeah, it might. We might have one if this is the way things are going. Although I feel like the user base of video games has been doing an improving job over the course of the past few years at recognizing how to give feedback in such a way that companies will actually take notice.
Yeah, by not buying things.
Yeah, like, I mean, if you look at Anthem received the judgment that it deserved. If you look at Fallout 76, it received the judgment that it deserved. Look at Warcraft 3 Reforged. It received the judgment that it deserved.
Yeah.
So this is starting to actually happen now.
Yeah. We're seeing customers getting just kind of sick of not getting what they paid for.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
This is all very much an Atari ET situation, right? Because imagine if we were still distributing games via physical copies.
Oh yeah, everyone would be taking it straight
warehouses full of unwanted copies of Warcraft 3 Reforged. Like, people talk about how we haven't had a video games crash yet. We haven't had an ET situation yet where somebody has knocked together a totally phoned-in game, no pun intended, and it's just not sold at all.
Well, that can't happen in this day and age because we get those every year.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like, the only difference is that we don't have physical copies building up in landfills. It hasn't happened since Tabula Rasa.
I still have the box. I found it again.
That was the last game that I remember was a dumpster filler, in that they actually had dumpsters full of copies of Tabula Rasa.
And just to hammer home how much Blizzard knows they're lying about their customer trade laws, can you imagine what the response would be if Walmart came up to them and said, hey, guys, like 800 people just showed up and returned this product you sent us, and it's just sitting in our warehouses. You're going to need to take it back and give us a proper shipment. They would be like, yeah, hang on, just give us a little bit.
You better hurry up, because here's Mr. Lawyer, and Mr. Lawyer has a big bat.
Yeah, they will. Walmart would be suing their butts into next Tuesday. So them telling the customers they can't take refunds just because they're dumb?
At any rate, Blizzard deserves all the suffering they get for this. There's no way of determining the level of complicity that Lemon Sky were undergoing. I mean, their work has been good. The last major point of reference that we have for them and doing work subcontracting as remasters for Blizzard products. So, but ultimately, it's Blizzard that has to commission it, and guide the process and approve it and release it. So Blizzard holds the responsibility for this, even if it was subcontracted to someone else.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Oh dear. All right, now that disaster's out of the way, I think it's going to be a very cold day before I buy another Blizzard product at this rate.
Yeah, I don't have their launcher installed anymore, and I don't want to put it on my computer lest the thing become corrupted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Chinese now, so you know it's going to try and steal your data.
Right, so how about a contrast?
Something good?
Torchlight Frontiers.
Yes.
Okay, so Torchlight Frontiers was basically was to be a quote sequel unquote to Torchlight 1 and Torchlight 2, which popular Diablo style ARPGs we can call them. It was fixing to be released as the most staggeringly scummy microtransaction riddled piece of garbage you could imagine.
Basically, they were doing Diablo Immortal except with Torchlight.
Yeah, pretty much. Honestly, it sounded worse than Diablo Immortal.
It did,
in a lot
actually.
Of ways. Like having to level your characters multiple times depending on what zone they're in, that sort of thing.
Yeah, there was a lot of really dumb mechanics they announced.
Everything about it was anti-consumer and utterly repellent to anybody who was a fan of Torchlight.
Yep.
So, surprisingly, rather than just mushing on because microtransactions, the developers somehow managed to convince their publishers to let them change direction.
Yeah.
And they did. They wholly changed direction. Rather than using these assets to release a game that would completely faceplant because nobody wanted it, they decided, you know what, we've got all these assets, we'll make a game that they actually want. So they've decided to completely reorient their development process in favor of making a proper Torchlight 3. So it's going to have a classic structure of a series of chapters that you proceed through in a linear fashion. There's no horizontal progression where you've got to level your character again in every level. All of the rescaling for different zones has been removed so that you can use a standard style of ARPG progression system where you can actually build your character up coherently from zone to zone. They haven't made everything public. Only the towns are public for forming parties. Everywhere else is instanced, so you can basically, private play is always better. Period. End. And you can play in offline mode.
Yes.
They've separated it in the old Diablo 2 style, so you've got your offline mode characters. They can't play in the proper online environment, so that when you hack the crap out of your character, you aren't going to contaminate the online space. And they removed the in-game real money store.
Yes. What amazes me, though, is this is Perfect World they've convinced to do this.
Yeah, it was to be published by Perfect World, who are, one of the crown princes of monetizing things through vicious microtransactions, along with, the likes of others like Nexon and so forth.
And the people who lobotomize the Cryptic franchises, not salty at all, no, not at all. Lost potential.
But this was built, this change in direction was built on fan feedback.
Yes.
It was built on people objecting loudly enough and swearing that they wouldn't buy the darn thing. And I think probably a certain amount of fear based on what they had seen, because there's no way that the Torchlight devs were unaware of, don't you guys own phones? That attitude?
That kind of rung around the world, that phrase.
Yeah. That attitude where you can just push on and force down your fan base's throat the game that you want to give them instead of the game that they want to play, and how people react to that.
Yeah. If you don't give people the game they want to play, they will not give you their money. Simple as that.
Yeah, people are in control of their own wallets as much as companies don't like to admit that.
They try and make us forget about that.
Some people have very poor control over their wallets, but they still have control over their wallets.
Yes.
But yeah, it's always been a thing where they just kind of forget that. And I wonder what the morale's like for the developers of Torchlight right now. I really do, because they just managed to completely stop their baby from being turned into a monster.
Yeah, I'd imagine they're all pretty happy over there because they get to make Torchlight 3 as they hopefully originally intended.
Well, what I've been hearing though, there's sort of an increasing tendency for people to buy games on principle now.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
the developer listens, then changes their ways, and people buy on principle.
Yes.
They've got disposable income. That's why people do things like supporting Patreons and stuff, is because they've got disposable income to support things that they believe in. And that doesn't apply any less to video games. And in fact, being that they're a commercial product, it should apply more. And people are saying that. I'm not a huge fan of the Torchlight franchise, but they made the right decision here. They made a pro consumer decision, a pro fan decision, and they're going to support it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with this a lot. I'm one of those people that will buy something just because the developers did good.
It's similar to the Sonic the Hedgehog thing, right? Like that Sonic games was horrifying.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people who fully intend to go see the Sonic the Hedgehog movie now because they listened to the fans and put their budget on the line to go back to the drawing board and make a fan familiar Sonic instead of the disturbing thing that they had before.
Yeah. I probably won't go see it in cinemas, but I'll watch it on DVD.
Yeah, like there are a lot of people though who say that they will go and see it on principle because it was movie studios are notorious for not thinking about fans at all. Like they're just like, oh, we can spit in the fans' face. What are they going to do? They're stupid fans. They'll just give us their money regardless. It's
Star Wars.
Yeah, Last Jedi showed that that's not the case anymore.
Yep.
Because Last Jedi bled into Solo, and Solo tanked horribly.
Yep. I really want to say I hope this consumer direction keeps going and think it will, but it's really hard to call what the companies are going to do because they're run by stupid people.
Yeah, but the thing is that this attitude is right for commercial exploitation as well. It's just that it's classic capitalist exploitation, which is where you turn exploitation and greed to the advantage of the market as a whole. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So all they need to do is realize that there's this mysterious principle in economics where if you give people you give your customers a product that they want, they give you money in exchange for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not all of us can have an ox horn to save Fallout 76 from going and bankrupting Bethesda single-handedly. Not every company is that fortunate. If you keep messing your customers around enough, they're just going to say, okay, I'll go spend my money somewhere else. And then you don't get to make games anymore. You don't get to sell products.
We are well past the point of market saturation. Nobody's product is special anymore.
Nope.
Like you have to excel in the product that you produce. You don't have any special rights simply due to being person X who made the game. Yeah. You need to make people like you. You're not the only game in town anymore, no pun intended.
Yeah, even before Blizzard started blizzarding on everything, like that all died with Tim Schafer and his Kickstarter. Like that was the end of all that.
Yeah. That was like proof positive for most people that the star power of having a history of developing games people love was not enough to carry the day.
Yeah. There have been very, very few people that have been able to live up to the idea that they set forth in people's heads of who they were and that they were actually good at their job.
And people are still buying into it though. Like people are still funneling money into Star Citizen's coffers. Yeah. And I think that Star Citizen will one day grind its way to release, but by the time it does, nobody will care.
Yeah, I've given up caring. I would have loved a spiritual successor to Freelancer. And I would have loved that, good grief, 8 years ago now?
I'm afraid that you're just going to have to play Stellaris and Elite Dangerous and things like that.
Yeah, I'd go play X4 or something like that, I don't know.
But that's the thing, right? When Freelancer came out, there was Freelancer.
Yeah.
Now you have a menagerie of different games with overlapping concepts that you can pick your perfect balance and play that.
Yeah, like I could go play X if I want to play the economic things. I can go play... let me think. Rogue Galaxy, if I want the shooty bang type adventure. There's options. There's always
you got
options.
choices. The customer is spoiled for choice these days with their luxury entertainment.
Yeah, when you're spoiled for choice, it becomes a buyer's market. You decide who will be king of the castle. They don't.
Yeah, we're seeing the growing pains of an industry, I think, that is learning it is no longer a niche industry and that people can just leave.
Yeah. Like, people will always have another option.
Yeah.
And sometimes that option is just not to buy.
Yep.
Yeah, the marketing departments of all of these different companies, like their job, what they spend all day doing is trying to persuade you that you don't have a choice, that you have to pay, you have to give them money. There's no other option. But yeah, it's just a deception. It's a deception. That's the whole point of marketing. The whole point of marketing is to make a person think that they can't do without that particular product, and there's not actually any reason to listen to them. You can make that decision on your own. You don't need them to think for you.
Yeah, I think these days a marketing department will need to evolve to become the company's moral compass, but they are not. They are most definitely not.
Yeah, and we're moving into a culture of people becoming more and more distrusting of what they hear from quote-unquote authority figures, especially the ones on TV.
Yep.
So if you try to advertise your product and you lie, people now are ready to call you out for it. They're not just going to say, well, maybe if you twist the words this way. They're not going to do that anymore.
Nope. Benefit of the doubt is really very thin these days.
It's dead effectively after, the Trump era.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a change in environment in the professional video games industry. And I'm interested to see how to move forward and who the new heroes are going to be. Because whenever a big market paradigm shift like this starts happening, somebody's got to be the new good guy. Somebody's got to be, on the tier of Team Cherry, but they're a small indie dev, so they can't really get, they're not going to become the household name that everybody knows. And they make they make super niche genre games. So they're not going to make it, but companies with their business practices are doing gangbusters.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that once upon a time, everybody was the size of Team Cherry.
Yeah. So
if we see a regression away from these giant companies, then it will just happen to be that there will be a bunch of different Team Cherries amongst the large number of small teams. And honestly, that's where you're usually going to end up after a market crash, is that you'll have the more people working out of basements and garages who are going to be putting together products, and some of them are going to bottle lightning.
Yeah.
That's the way it usually goes.
Yeah, someone will become the next Minecraft, or will become something like that.
In a market that wasn't, completely glutted by meaningless dreck, like Hollow Knight would have become a smash hit that everybody knew about. It would have become Castlevania. It just so happens that the market, when it came out, wasn't quite in a position to accommodate that particular level of catapulting to the forefront of the public eye. But it could happen in future that a game of that size with that type of development team and that development ethic will become a new hero in a future era. It just requires, though, that the current paradigm collapse, and it will probably collapse under its own weight in due time, unless the big companies manage to prolong their existence a little while longer by unlearning some of the bad lessons that they appear to have taught themselves.
Yeah, they're going to they could stick to their guns and try and monopolize the mobile game types or the housewife market, but then you're not selling video games to people that play video games anymore, and eventually the people that play video games want to buy video games. They want to buy video games.
Somebody will make those games, so you don't need to worry about that.
Even then, though, that market is not stable.
Yeah, so we're at a point where I guess they could prolong their lives keeping what they're doing. They could try and course correct, which would be the best thing to do. We saw what Capcom did when they got their head out of the butt.
They've released 4 really, really good games now.
Yeah, I was using them as a verb for bad game company, like not even 2 years ago. And they managed to completely win me back over, where if Capcom says, hey, we're releasing the game, I am at least going to give it a look.
Yeah, Resi 6, Devil May Cry 5, Monster Hunter. They did a good job on those three.
Resi 2 remake.
Resi 2 remake. Yeah. Iceborne.
Yeah, they've been killing it. So companies can learn. If somebody with, that can read market trends gets in the office department, doesn't matter if his name's Joe and he works as a janitor and goes, my dudes, this is why people hate you, and they listen, it's amazing what can happen.
Yeah. EA needs a Joe.
Well, EA might have got a Joe by accident.
Maybe.
They might accidentally have just gotten a wake-up call by themselves when they're like, single-player games are dead. Oh, wait, the only good game that people are talking about is a single-player game that we made.
There's no reason to believe yet that they've learned that lesson, that they don't just conclude in the end that it's some magic property of a Star Wars IP.
Yeah, like if Capcom released just Monster Hunter, as good as it is, but, Devil May Cry, they screwed the pooch on, and Resident Evil turned out to be another Resident Evil game, then we'd be in the same position. Yeah.
Well, Devil May Cry was a position where I think Itsuno was the guy that pulled Capcom's head out of their butt, because he said, you're going to let me make the game these games I want to make, starting with Devil May Cry 5, and if you try and meddle at all, I'm out.
Yeah.
And they couldn't lose it soon.
I mean, the Monster Hunter team locked the rest of Capcom out of their office.
Yeah.
And they would not let them in. There's strong and great dragons on the door and everything.
Yeah, so we have had our people that show up and go, my dudes, get out the way, you don't know what you're doing, to these big publishers.
Yeah.
But and it seems to have worked wonders where it's been, or the higher-ups have been willing to listen.
Provided, of course, it's the right person doing it and not some, woke monstrosity.
Yeah. What I want to see is actually, I kind of hope EA flops and they take the wrong lesson, which they seem to be from their little shenaniganery with Force Gucciness. Because they're moving all the assets and the developers around and spreading them around different companies. Like, oh, these particular individuals are clearly what gave this game its magic. We should spread them out.
No, EA, that's not what you do.
We can say no, bad EA, stop that, but we can't stop them from doing it.
Sadly, no.
Well, a lot of EA's recent problems have been in the direction of they viewed each individual studio as a unit of development power to make a game. And so they ended up doing things that didn't make any real sense. Like, they gave BioWare the job of making Anthem.
Yeah, that was a wrong move.
That's not how you assign your manpower. Why would you do this?
What?
You want a game that is 100%, a Destiny knockoff essentially with Iron Man flying, and you gave it to your narrative RPG people? Really?
Yeah. Just no. That was a bad choice all around.
What they're going to end up observing, hopefully in the long term, is that studios get good at particular things and they have particular skills, and you can actually communicate those skills between studios to a certain extent, but they are by no means completely interchangeable. Like, it is worth sometimes having people exchange from one studio to another so that they can communicate the new techniques for development that have been developed at other local studios. However, you can't just give one studio arbitrary game X and expect them to produce something acceptable, because it requires a certain skill set.
And this is why I want them to keep on this terrible track they're on, so that we can have a contrast point when people go, well, maybe it was just no, look what happened when EA did it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to see that sort of that polarization in responses, where you get effusive praise given to those people who do it well and incredible rancor directed towards those who do it poorly. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's no shortage of praise gets given to companies that do things well. Like, Monster Hunter World is doing really well in public opinion and in sales, and people love it. They think it's the greatest thing ever. And the Warcraft 3 Reforged debacle shows what happens when you don't do things well, and there's a huge polarization in response. what we're looking toward is the elimination of responses like the response to Pokemon Sword and Shield, which is, from all opinions that I've seen, a totally garbage Pokemon relative to previous entries, and yet it still sold 16 million units anyway.
Yeah, but
now, the question is, like, what happens for the next one that they sell?
Yeah.
Do they sell 16 million again on the weight of the Pokemon name, in which case the paradigm will continue. If people are hesitant to buy into it, and the sales tail is much longer and the initial sales lower, then we might be seeing a drifting away from just, buying it on the weight of the company saying that trust us, it's good.
We'll find out once the expansions launch. They got that 6 million install base now. How many of those people are actually going to buy the expansions?
16 million units moved, so I don't know how many people buy a copy of each.
There's a fair few, unfortunately. I wish they'd stop it.
If people wouldn't do that, then they'd stop splitting them up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pokemon consumers have never been the smartest cookies in the cookie jar.
I blame Pokemon for Fire Emblem Fates.
I do too. But Fate, it being split into multiple games, was far from the biggest problem it had.
It had a lot of problems, that game.
But it was the problem that stopped me from trying it way back when it came out.
Yeah. It was you dodged a bullet on that one. You should
I understand that. I understand that, but the reason is that they asked to purchase multiple games.
Yep.
They didn't need to do that, but they did. And as a result, they never got any of my money, and they never will.
Oh yeah, that was. I'm having Vietnam flashbacks right now. Of Fate.
You saw some things. You saw some.
I had to watch porn in real time, be an idiot for a whole game, and then not be able to finish it legit without the crap that they cut. No, bad times. Oh yeah.
All right. That's next. We have a launch date for Phantasy Star 2 in the West. Finally.
How many years has it been? How many?
So many where they've said, hey, Phantasy Star's coming to the West, and then they've gone radio silent. And then they pop up again a couple of years later, hey, we're bringing it to the West, and they're gone again.
Released in Japan on July the 4th, 2012.
Whoa. It's been that long. Good gravy.
8 years ago.
What are you doing, Sega? People will give you money. Well, finally they figured that out, so they'll be releasing it in the West on April 23rd. They are also doing a closed beta if you want to try and get in on that.
Well, I don't know how well Phantasy Star Online 2 can do, given how much water has gone under the bridge after all this time.
Yeah.
So, for the sake of the people who longed for it, I hope it's good. But
yeah,
I just don't have a lot of faith in them because there's not much money in it. It's going to be like the most comically microtransaction heavy thing in the world, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, probably. But honestly, I think the market is primed for a good new MMO. Like, there is currently one in the market at the moment.
I'm not confident that it is a good new MMO.
I mean, if someone's going to compete, that would be the time. Yeah, it is.
Like, that means that it's older. It's older than FF14, isn't it?
Yes. Oh, hang on.
I'm not 100% sure.
This is like, my dudes. Since it came out, it took a few years. We're finally going to release Wrath of the Lich King in 2020.
Let me see. Final Fantasy XIV was released by Yoshida in 2013. Now, is that base 14 or is that Realm Reborn?
Let's not think about what happened before Realm Reborn.
Yeah, that's probably for the... Oh, yeah, that's Realm Reborn.
The real release.
The re-release. The 2010 was the original.
the previous version 1.0 doesn't exist anymore in any way, shape, or form.
And neither should it.
When Yoshi P was asked about classic servers, he just laughed and said, "You don't want that, believe me."
Yeah, this is not. You think you do, but you don't. This is no, you don't.
I don't think it's just no, you don't. It's like I can't stand the shame of being associated with that. Seriously.
Yeah, just go away. So, yeah, but as it is, it's Final Fantasy XIV is the only MMO in the market that's not currently chewing its own face off. So, I don't know, if someone wants to compete, step up.
I just don't know if we're in the environment to take MMOs like we used to.
There is a lot of fatigue.
Yeah, well, the thing is that they've sort of ground that business model down into the most sort of a lot of the stuff that we see in the mobile sector. It evolved out of MMOs.
Yes, it did.
It evolved out of the idea that you can extract multiple smaller payments from a person over the course of time in perpetuity, provided that you can keep your servers running. That's sort of like the root of a lot of what we see in the mobile space.
Yeah. And yeah, the market is still kind of saturated because we had the MMO gold rush during the noughties, the early noughties, and people are still feeling that.
A lot of casualties.
Yeah,
we had the boom with World of Warcraft, and now people just I don't know if the market for MMOs exists anymore. Mostly because people know MMOs aren't permanent anymore.
Yeah, I think that they really need to. They need the people who decide to initiate these big MMO projects really need to come to understand that they should not be aiming where they were aiming, because everybody was aiming to be World of Warcraft, but the reality is that even World of Warcraft is not World of Warcraft anymore. So no point in shooting for that target. I honestly believe that that Final Fantasy XIV largely derives its success from being a multiplayer single-player game.
Yeah, I'd say
not from being an MMO.
That's admittedly where WildStar fell down. Is it tried to be WoW?
Yeah, it did WoW exactly right in many respects, not all respects, but many respects. It's just that it tried to be WoW in an environment where, number one, there was already WoW, and number two, old WoW didn't have a place at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
And they just didn't have the scope and dedication as a company to the scale of the project, because you really have to be at your customer's beck and call to manage to invade that space when its current dominant party is still, throwing their weight around.
Yeah. At another time, and had they changed a few ideas, I think WildStar would have done a lot better.
Yeah, they made some pretty key mistakes, and they didn't have the financial backing to stick it out through the rough patches. And that's the thing that most people don't seem to realize about World of Warcraft, is that World of Warcraft has financially been really down in the dumps several times in its history and has rallied to make more money. It doesn't always make more money.
Yeah, an MMO
it doesn't always make money.
Developing an MMO is pretty much an all or nothing gamble.
Yeah, and you have to stay behind it through thick and thin, even if things are going crap. Yeah. Sometimes you might need to pull a Final Fantasy XIV and pull the whole thing back onto the workbench and fix your mistakes. Yeah. But you can't give up on it, because then it will just die. You can't let it. You can't just assume things will be fine, because it will die.
Mm-hmm. But that said, don't go changing things just for the sake of changing things, which is where Blizzard's fallen down a lot.
Blizzard's fallen down in
they've fallen down quite a few places, but that's one of them.
So I think that generally speaking, when you want to sell an MMO product, you really have to be shooting for a particular niche. You can't afford to try and be WoW anymore. So, you don't see very many of those big titles appearing anymore. Like the biggest sort of attempt to shoot into that space and just not make it was Elder Scrolls Online, I think, in recent times. And what they did, I feel, on some gut level, not necessarily an outspoken one, but on some gut level, I feel like they realized as they were doing it that what they really needed to do was capture and hold people who wanted an Elder Scrolls MMO, not people who wanted an MMO.
Well, they did their own Final Fantasy XIV on a smaller level, where Tamriel Unleashed.
Yeah, but what they started out doing was making an MMO which would grab everybody. But what they needed to do, and what they discovered they needed to do, was to make an Elder Scrolls MMO that would grab the people that wanted an Elder Scrolls MMO. And if you start out recognizing that actually that doesn't mean the entire market, it doesn't mean the entire MMO market, it doesn't mean the entire Elder Scrolls market, it means a very specific subset of the Elder Scrolls market and as many of their friends as they can con to play the game, then you know what market you are actually developing for. It is not that broader market anymore. World of Warcraft had that luxury because most people weren't inured against the concept in any respect, and most people didn't know whether or not they would like it to begin with as a concept. And so, they had an open season. Final Fantasy, similarly, their market was very broad because, number one, the Final Fantasy market is broad, and over time has been all things to all men within the fantasy, the Japanese-style fantasy space, and they basically had just a lot of room to play in because Final Fantasy historically has been so diverse in its narrative approaches and in its settings. So they've just got a lot of tools in the toolbox, really.
They also had the luxury of a pre-established market, being Final Fantasy XI.
I think that that's true to an extent, but I think a lot of those people who are playing Final Fantasy XI are continuing to play Final Fantasy XI.
Some of them,
because that game requires you to be in for the long haul, like EVE Online style.
Haul. Yeah, it's a bit ridiculous.
But I mean, other than that, most of the major titles have really contracted around specific audiences, like Star Trek Online. There are still tons of people who play the crap out of that, but they're never going to grow. That's not really a thing. EVE Online didn't contract, and the reason it didn't contract was it was never very large. But the reason it was never very large is that they knew who they wanted, and they wanted sadists and masochists exclusively.
And soulless businessmen.
Yeah. So there are MMOs around, but people aren't going to try and be Rift anymore.
No,
I don't think. Like there's no money.
Yeah, Rift's original tagline was "We're not in Azeroth anymore."
Yeah, it's like you're not even pretending like you're not just even trying to trade on someone else's success.
And that MMO was blah.
It was bland. It was grey paste. It was World of Warcraft with none of the charm that World of Warcraft once had. But I mean, and then you've got other sort of corner cases of strange pathologies like Skyforge, where they just compulsively redesign everything like they work for Google every 5 minutes.
Stop it.
Like, why would you even do that? I loved that game until I got too confused to play it.
It's such a shiny game, though.
Yeah, it's shiny and it feels good to play in a way that I hadn't felt since Terra.
Yeah,
but
pre-needed in old days.
They kept redesigning it, and I just didn't get it anymore.
I'm confused now. I don't know what I'm doing anymore in that game.
Yeah, Secret World. I think that there was a cleaner re-release they could have done for that. I think that they botched that along every imaginable axis. Like, not quite Warcraft Reforged style, but they're getting up there.
Yeah.
They alienated a lot of people. And the pestering, the endless pestering. My goodness. But I think that we're going to see a lot more of this sort of niche approach where they select a narrow target market and they try and appeal to that narrow target, instead of trying to be a broad MMO, even under a narrower genre like fantasy. Like fantasy MMO is not a small enough target to hit with reliability.
No,
and people have seen that over and over again, and that was the problem with Warhammer Online. Really, like they should have leaned hard into Warhammer and less hard into fantasy MMO.
Yeah,
because can you imagine Altdorf and a place like Altdorf, right? Did you ever explore Altdorf in that game?
No, I didn't get a chance to explore Altdorf.
But if just to imagine a place like that actually populated, actually full of stuff and people and things, like nobody would have bothered to make Dragon Age. There would have been no point. But Dragon Age was basically trading on the fact that Warhammer Fantasy didn't exist.
Yeah, it wanted to be the dark fantasy thing, and basically that just meant blood and boobs.
Yeah, like if you had like less boobs, more blood, and a lot more orcs, I think you actually make a more popular, more enduring game.
Much
Because
more shouting.
everybody has forgotten about Dragon Age now to a greater or lesser extent. Was people still right up until the point that they lobotomized the IP, people still loved Warhammer Fantasy Battle.
Yeah.
Now you've got Space Marine, Fantasy Space Marines, and nobody
Space
wants a bar of it.
Marines!
I don't know why you'd try and jam Space Marines into your Warhammer Fantasy Battle, since everybody who likes Space Marines is already playing Space Marines in 40k.
Yeah, I don't know.
This doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that?
For the ham, I guess.
But,
Not like Warhammer was actually lacking in ham.
I think most of the other contemporaries with those things have withered down to a stable but tiny level. So, like Champions Online, I doubt many people join Champions Online nowadays.
No, they've got their diehards, and that's about it.
I doubt very many people start playing EverQuest 2 anymore.
Yeah, because most people see the road ahead of them and think just, no, I don't want the pain.
Yeah, so there's a lot of these ones around, and a lot that, they came out after a grand lead-in and then just never went anywhere because they were trying to do, it's a multiplayer fantasy RPG. But, like Shroud of the Avatar, do you remember Shroud of the Avatar?
Not really.
It was intending to be a spiritual successor to Ultima.
Oh, yeah.
But it was just a generic fantasy MMO, and it was only mediocre at best.
Yeah.
And nobody remembers it anymore. But it was, like, in the people who followed MMO news back when it was being talked up, it was, like, one of the great hopes for the future. And, no. I mean, I think that Lord British was actually involved in development, although I'm not sure to what extent. But, yeah. It was a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no reason to play that game. Period.
Yeah.
End. And there are lots of things like that. All the things that came out sort of, the second half of the twin-teens, like those games, any of them that tried to be generic imploded horribly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, finding your niche guarantees you're going to be beloved by the people in that niche. And all companies need to realize if their first venture into any genre, not just MMOs, they got to aim for a niche market that they're passionate about.
Yeah,
that they at the company want to make a game for.
It has to be something that's pretty vibrant as well. Like it needs to have a very well-defined sense of itself in order to stabilize. The way, there are lots of things about Final Fantasy that are iconic, like Moogles and Cactuars, and every Final Fantasy fan who sees a Moogle knows what a Moogle is because it's a Moogle.
Mm-hmm.
It's something, there's a point of reference. Whereas if you look at something else which has leaned hard into an existing IP, like Age of Conan, like there's nothing to bind all those people together. There's no common index for all the people playing that game. There's nothing iconic about it. It's just, it's that game that's like trying to be edgy World of Warcraft.
It's Conan. That's about it.
It's the game with the dongs in it.
It's got boobs.
Yeah, it has boobs and dongs, although not nearly to the extent that Conan Exiles does.
Oh, yes, it does. It just seems to be the dark fantasy thing these days, is nudity and violence.
Well, I mean, that's I blame Dragon Age for that.
Yeah, you can blame Dragon Age for that. That's fair.
Because there was like comically sensationalist nudity and violence.
They really played it up, saying this is a fantasy for adults. This is going to have adult themes. Essentially, it's just boobs and violence.
That's how you can tell it's for a really prurient market. Because they are selling it as being for adults, so you know that adults would have no interest in it.
Yeah.
If you market your product as edgy enough for the adults only, all you're going to get is 13-year-olds.
Oh, come on. I forget what game it was, but it was selling itself as your grandma will hate it.
What? It sounds like something from the 90s.
It was early noughties. I'm trying to remember what game it was now. But it was such a terrible ad campaign. I have to look it up. Hang on. Was it Manhunter?
Okay.
Manhunt?
Was it the Wii game? That black and white one? Maybe?
No, that was Mad World. I don't think it was that.
It wasn't Mad World.
Was it that one? That like reality TV one?
That was also Mad World, wasn't it?
I don't know if Mad World was that. I'd never played Mad World.
It was Dead Space 2.
Dead Space 2? Really?
It was Dead Space, yes. Your mum hates this game. Where I think they just showed people the eyeball scene. I mean, everyone cringes at the eyeball scene.
Well, yeah, people cringe about eyeballs in general if they're doing anything other than being eyeballs.
Yes.
Every time I tell someone about how my surgery was conducted, they cringe.
Yeah, I've had LASIK, and I tell him, no, I don't need to find details. I nope right out of that.
Yeah, there are some things you just nope.
The only video game my Nana ever liked was Goof Troop on the NES. She would play that one with me.
Goof Troop.
I don't know, every time I go to my grandmother's place, I end up playing the original Monster Boy. She's still got a working Sega Master System.
We're at about 3 hours now.
Yep, so we should start wrapping up. Let me see. Any other quick news articles? We've done Torchlight, we've done WoW. Patapon 2 is coming to the PS4. Who wants earworms?
Patapon.
I did not play Patapon for many years after when it first came out. But I knew the chant because the commercial was on all the diddly dang time.
And it gets stuck in your head. So I've played through most of Patapon 1, and Patapon 2 is basically an improvement in every single possible way.
Patapon. Do you mean to say that they are more or less earwormy?
More.
So that's an improvement to you.
For a given value of improvement, I guess. But they fixed up a lot of mechanics and things like that. Things that the game just feels more responsive. There's more variety in enemies and bosses. The story is better. You've got more variety in units. Or just basically more. But I'm very skeptical on this. Because the port for Patapon 1 to the PS4 does not work. Like 90% of the time.
What do you mean it does not work?
As in, this is a game that is very dependent on accurate button inputs. And if you're using a Bluetooth controller or...
emulator delay.
You are going to have delayed inputs.
On a rhythm game.
Which means the game does not work. So I haven't actually tried it with a wired controller because of how the living room system is set up. I've got the TV, I've got the PS4 underneath it. The cord is only 1 meter long. So which means if I plug the controller into the PS4 and try to use it wired, I'm basically pressing my face to the TV. This is suboptimal, as you might imagine. Patapon.
It will haunt your dreams.
More point, the Don to Don song haunts my dreams. Because I can never get that thing to go off correctly.
The meat cooking song.
The meat cooking song.
Like the Don to Don song. What you talking about, Willis?
There's the Dodon song, which is Activate Miracle. And you need to use that to change weather effects and things like that. But once you play that song, if you actually manage to get it without breaking your fever, because you got the timing on it wrong, because every other song is kind of a 1 or 2 note thing, and it will start on a single note. The Don song will start on a double note. Oh no, hang on, it goes single, double, double. Yeah. It's just out of time with everything else. So many times have I gone to input that to try and change the weather or whatnot, and yeah, I've flubbed it up.
Why do you flub it up, Fern?
Because I can't carry a tune in a bucket.
Same.
But you play piano.
Used to. Past tense.
So yeah. I'd like to try it, but I'm very skeptical on it. I don't know, maybe they managed to fix that problem. I hope they have.
Pon.
Alternately, if I want to annoy people, I could put Loco Roco on.
That's even worse.
It is, because it's so cheerful. I mean, at least the Patapon are stuck in a life or death war. The Patapon, no. Their species is being eaten, but they don't care. They're just happy and they'll sing. Anyway, that's about it for the news, I think.
Yep. Why is the obligatory idle boss an underwater boss?
Reasons. That's all I can think of, is just reasons.
Underwater sequences are bad, okay?
Yes, they are.
Alright. I guess we'll get out of here.
Yep. I think, folks, we're nearing the end here. Y'all got anything left before we close out for goodsies?
Nope.
No,
all right.
Too hot. I got no energy.
All right, folks. We will see y'all next week then. Closing comments, go.
I don't want to adult anymore.
Same.
I don't want to adult either. So unpleasant. Why do we got to do this, man?
I tell you what, I'll keep adulting if you remove the government from it.
The government's the only thing that allows us to sell our product.
That's true.
Because otherwise people wouldn't care whether or not they got sick after eating food.
Alright. Take us out.
Alright, folks. I think we're done with the show. We'll see you next week. Sayonara. Bye-bye.